The wheelchair had been broken for months. Nobody in that mansion cared. Simone Baptiste is a caregiver. Black, Haitian American, 29 years old. A big badge on her chest that reads Caregiver. Her mother's heart medication costs more than she earns. So she takes the job nobody wants. The man in the chair is Han Jun-so, boss of the Haidong. A black dragon inked down the left side of his neck, a luxury watch on a wrist that no longer moves. He offers her the full payment to walk away the same day. She looks at the scattered pills, the pressure sores, the chair with no maintenance, and she says no. She tells him the truth to his face. The paralysis isn't only the accident, it's the neglect. Then comes the boardroom. His brother, Min-jae, humiliates her in front of everyone. Silver tie, cold eyes, a ring shaped like power. He dares Jun-so to prove he is still a man. Simone sets the support beneath him. She looks him in the eyes. Stand for me. And for a few seconds, he holds his own weight. Everyone in that room thought his legs were dead. What she found next was never supposed to be found. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The pharmacy clerk slid the box back across the counter before Simone finished counting the bills. Card declined twice, he said. You want to try a third? Simone laid the cash down instead. $42. She smoothed each note flat, the way you flatten something to make it look like more. The clerk watched. Behind her, a man cleared his throat. That covers the beta blocker, the clerk said. Not the other one. Which other one? The Entresto. He tapped the screen. That's the expensive piece. She knew which piece was expensive. She'd known since the last refill, and the one before. She picked up the small box, left the second one on the counter, and said she'd come back Friday. The clerk was already looking past her at the man with the throat. Outside, the morning was the color of dishwater. Simone put the beta blocker in her bag, in the inner pocket, and did not check her phone, even though it had buzzed twice in line. She knew who it was. She walked the 4 blocks to the bus stop and let 2 buses pass while she did the arithmetic that had no answer. Her mother took 6 pills. Simone could afford 4. That was the whole of it. No amount of standing at a counter changed the subtraction. The phone buzzed a 3rd time. She looked this time, the hospital scheduler. Could she cover the night float again? Thursday? Someone had called out. She typed yes before she'd decided to, thumb moving faster than the part of her that was tired. Another night. Another set of lines to keep in a man's arm who kept pulling them out. She put the phone away and watched a pigeon work at something in the gutter and did not think about the box she'd left behind on the counter, because thinking about it wouldn't buy it. A woman at the shelter beside her was talking to no one about the weather. Simone gave her half a smile and the woman took it like change. At the apartment on the 3rd floor, Mireille was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with the radio low, her hands folded on a placemat gone soft at the corners. She wore the tunica with the yellow birds. She looked up when the door opened and read her daughter's face in half a second, the way mothers do. They only had one, Mireille said, not a question. They had both. Simone set the box down next to the coffee tin. I got the one that matters most this week. They both matter. This week, the heart matters most. Mireille reached out and turned the box so the label faced her, though she couldn't read the small print without the glasses that lived in the other room. Her fingers stayed on the cardboard. You didn't sleep, she said. I slept. You came in at 2. Simone filled the kettle. She measured the coffee. She did the small ritual things with her back to the table so her mother could look at her without either of them having to say the next part. The double shift. The patient in 4B who pulled his lines out every night. The bus that came late both ways. She was 29 and she moved like someone older when she thought no one was watching, and her mother was always watching. There's a job, Mireille said. Simone turned off the tap. There's always a job. Odette called. Her cousin does the agency placements. Private home. Mireille pushed a folded piece of paper across the table, torn from a notepad, a number written in her careful looping hand. Live-in, some weeks. Pays like 3 of your hospital shifts. Live-in means I'm not here. Live-in means the Entresto gets bought. Mireille tapped the paper once. Both boxes. Every month. That's what live-in means, Simone. The kettle began to tick as it heated. Simone looked at the number and did not pick it up. Who's home? She said. Rich people. Korean family, Odette said. Big house up past the water. Mirelle shrugged one shoulder, the shrug that meant she'd already decided, and was letting her daughter arrive there on her own. The man is sick. Young man chair. Sick how? That's what you go and find out. You go find out what? Mirelle said. And then you decide. Not me deciding for you. You. She unfolded her hands. But you decide with the number in front of you, Simone. Not with your pride. Pride never once bought my heart pills. I don't have pride. You have nothing but pride. Mirelle said it warm. The way she said everything hard. It's the only thing your father left you and it fits you like his coat. Too big in the shoulders. She reached for the coffee tin herself, since her daughter had stopped moving. Go up there, look at the man. If it's honest work, take it. If it smells wrong, come home. And we manage like we always manage. We always manage meant the months they hadn't. They both let the phrase stand anyway, because some lies you keep in the house on purpose, like a lamp you leave on. The kettle screamed. Simone lifted it off the flame before it could finish. The house sat behind a wall, and the wall behind a gate, and the gate opened before Simone touched it, which meant someone had been watching the road. A man in a black coat stood inside the courtyard with his hands folded low. He had a scar through his right eyebrow, thin as a paper cut, and a wire that ran from his collar to his ear. Ms. Baptiste, he didn't offer his hand. Kim Dae-hyun, I run security. For a sick man in a wheelchair. For the house. He turned and walked, expecting her to follow. And she did, past a fountain that wasn't running, and a garden trimmed too sharp to sit in. The front doors were black lacquer, taller than they needed to be. Everything here was taller than it needed to be. Inside, the air was cold and smelled faintly of nothing at all, the way expensive places smell when someone pays to keep smells out. A woman waited at the foot of a staircase, small, precise, a leather folder held against her chest, hair to her shoulders. She introduced herself as Yoon Hae-rin and said she handled the household accounts. She said it the way people say things they want written down later. You'll meet Mr. Han, Hae-rin said. He's not expecting to like you. Most of my patients aren't. Hae-rin's mouth moved, not quite a smile. She led Simone up the stairs and Dae-hyun did not follow, which Simone noticed, because a man who ran security for a house did not usually let a stranger climb toward the sick man alone. He peeled off at the landing and stood by a window with his back to the glass. The room at the end of the hall had double doors, one of them open. Inside, the curtains were drawn against a view that must have cost a fortune, and in the gray half-light, a man sat in a wheelchair with his back to the door, facing the covered window as if he could see through it. Mr. Han, Hae-rin said, the caregiver from the agency. Send her back. The voice was low and even, a man used to the sentence being enough. Simone stayed in the doorway. Hae-rin's eyes went to her, apology and instruction in the same glance, and then Hae-rin stepped out and pulled the door most of the way shut, leaving the two of them and the gap. Simone did not send herself back. She walked in. Han Jun-so turned the chair with one hand. He did it well, a clean pivot, and she filed that away. The shoulders worked, the grip worked, the core held him upright without a strap. He was younger than she'd pictured. 30, maybe. A dark t-shirt, dark sweatpants, bare forearms roped with the kind of muscle that came from hauling your own weight around all day. On the left side of his neck, starting under the ear and running down beneath his collar, was a tattoo. A dragon. Black, the tail vanishing where the fabric began. He looked at her the way rich men look at furniture that's been delivered to the wrong address. You're not deaf, he said. So you heard me. I heard you. Then you understand I'm asking you to leave. You're not asking. She set her bag down on a chair by the wall. Asking has a please in it. Something flickered across his face and was gone. He rolled the chair 2 feet closer, into the light that leaked around the curtain edge, and now she could see his eyes, dark and steady, and rimmed with the particular exhaustion of a man who slept badly and told no one. I'll make this simple, Jun-so said. The agency will be paid the full contract, 6 weeks. You'll be paid for 6 weeks. You go home today and you never come back, and everyone gets their money. You want to pay me to disappear. I want the illusion of care without the inconvenience of a stranger in my house." He said it flatly, no shame in it. "You get the same check. Better, actually. You don't have to do anything." For a moment, Simone let the offer sit in the room. 6 weeks' pay, both boxes at the pharmacy, every month, plus the arrears, plus the Friday she'd promised the clerk. Her mother's heart medicine? Solved, for the price of a lie she wouldn't even have to tell well. She thought about it long enough to be honest with herself that she thought about it. Then she crossed to the window and pulled the curtain back. Light fell into the room. Junso squinted, one hand coming up, and Simone used the second his eyes were down to look at what the dark had been hiding. The nightstand. On it, a plastic pill organizer with the days of the week. Half the compartments spilled, tablets loose among them, 2 colors that should never sit together in the same slot. A water glass with a skin on it. A prescription bottle on its side. Cap off. "Cover the window," Junso said. She didn't. She picked up the pill organizer instead. "Put that down. Who fills this for you? Put it down." Simone tipped the organizer toward the light. "This one's a diuretic. This one's a blood thinner. They're in Tuesday together, and Tuesday was 4 days ago, which means either you skipped Tuesday or you doubled up Saturday. And either way, somebody who doesn't know what they're doing loaded this box." She set it down, exactly where it had been. Probably somebody who was told to keep a stranger out of the house. The room was quiet. Down the hall, a floorboard took a footstep and went still. "You're a nurse," Junso said, "not a detective." "I read pill boxes. It's the same job." She moved to the chair, his chair, and crouched beside the left wheel before he could stop her, running her thumb along the rim where the tire met the frame. "This bearing's dry. You hear that click when you turn left? That's not you. That's the chair. When did anyone last service it? It rolls. It rolls crooked. You've been overcorrecting with your right arm for weeks. That's why your right shoulder sits higher than your left." She stood. "You didn't notice because nobody's looked at you long enough to notice. That's not the injury, Mr. Hahn. That's the neglect." He'd gone very still, not the stillness of a man who's been insulted, the stillness of a man who's been seen. "Get out," he said. "Quiet now." In a minute, Simone stepped closer, close enough that he had to tip his chin to hold her eyes, and she did not look away from a rich man the way rich men expected. "Take off the offer, the one where I disappear." "Why?" "Because I want to see your back." He refused, of course. He told her the offer stood and the door was behind her, and Daehyun would walk her to it. He said it 3 ways. Simone waited each of them out, standing at the foot of his chair with her arms loose at her sides, and when he ran out of ways to say leave, she said one thing. "You've got a sore, lower left, over the bone you sit on. It started as a red patch you could press white. It's past that now, or you wouldn't be shifting your weight every 90 seconds the way you've done since I walked in." Junso stopped shifting his weight. "You don't talk about it," she went on, "because talking about it means somebody has to look at it, and looking at it means somebody's been failing you, and you'd rather rot than admit somebody's been failing you. I've met 40 of you. You're not special. You're just younger and richer than the rest." For a long moment he only breathed. Then he moved his hand, not to the wheels, not to the call button she'd already spotted clipped to the armrest, but to the hem of his own shirt. He didn't lift it. He gripped it, knuckles paling, a man deciding. "If you're wrong," he said, "you leave and you take the check, and you never say my name in a sentence with the word wheelchair again. And if I'm right, then you've made your point, and you leave anyway." "No," Simone shook her head slowly. "If I'm right, you tell me who's been loading that pill box, and you let me throw them out of your care, and I stay the 6 weeks I was hired for." She saw him weigh it. She saw the exact instant the pride lost, because it always lost to the body eventually, and the body had been screaming under him for weeks. He turned the chair, gripped the rail beside the window, and leaned to bare his lower back. Simone had seen 1,000 backs. She kept her face still because keeping her face still was the whole of the kindness she had to give in that second. The sore sat where she'd said it would, over the ischial tuberosity, and it had gone past red, past the white when pressed stage she'd described, into something with a rim and a darker center that had no business existing on a man with money and staff and a house behind 2 walls. "How long?" she said, and her voice came out lower than she meant it. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." 3 weeks, he said. "Maybe 4. 4 weeks?" She let the curtain of his shirt fall gently back into place, herself, so he wouldn't have to reach around. 4 weeks a man in your position sat on an open wound and nobody dressed it. That's not paralysis, Mr. Hahn. Paralysis didn't do that. People did that. He wouldn't look at her. His jaw worked once. "Who fills the pillbox?" Simone said. Silence. "Who services the chair?" Silence. "Who was supposed to turn you, check your skin, keep the pressure off that bone?" She waited. "Nobody. That's the answer. The answer is nobody, and you let it be nobody, because the man who ran this house before the accident never had to ask anyone for anything, and he'd rather die polite than admit he can't reach his own back." Junso's hand came off the rail. He turned the chair to face her fully, and for the first time there was heat in his face. Real heat. The first honest thing he'd shown her. "You don't know anything about the man who ran this house. I know his skin's breaking down." She held his eyes. "I know his heart medicine." "No. That's my mother's. I know his everything is 1 missed week from a hospital. And a headline. I know a company somewhere depends on him looking strong. And right now he's rotting quietly, so nobody finds out he's not." She tilted her head. "How am I doing?" He didn't answer, but he didn't tell her to leave again either, and in the grammar of that room, the absence of leave was the loudest thing he'd said. The door opened. Hei-rin stood there with the leather folder, and behind her in the hall, Dae-hyun, and behind him, half visible, a man in a gray suit Simone hadn't seen arrive, narrow, straight-backed, a silver tie, watching her the way you watch a draft come in under a door. "Is there a problem?" the gray suit man asked. He looked at Junso when he said it, not at Simone. "Cousin," I heard raised voices. "There's no problem, Min-jae," Junso said. Han Min-jae stepped into the doorway, but not past it, as though the threshold were a line he was choosing not to cross for now, in front of witnesses. His eyes moved over the pulled curtain, the light in the room, the caregiver standing too close to the chair. "The agency sent this one?" Min-jae said. "I thought we agreed the house didn't need outside people. Security risk?" He smiled at Simone with the front of his face. "No offense." "None landed," Simone said. Something moved behind Min-jae's eyes. He turned back to his cousin. "Junso, you're not well enough to be interviewing staff. Let Hei-rin handle it. Let me handle it. You should rest." "I'm resting now," Junso said. "You can go." The words were quiet, but Simone watched them cost him something, and land like a slap anyway, because Min-jae's smile tightened at one corner. He held it. He was good at holding it. He inclined his head, said something about the board that Simone didn't catch, and withdrew, and Dae-hyun's eyes followed him down the hall until he was gone. When the room was theirs again, Junso let out a breath he'd been guarding. "You'll dress the wound," he said. Not asking, learning her own grammar back at her. "I'll dress the wound. I'll reload the box. I'll get the chair serviced. Or I'll do it myself with a rag and oil today, because that bearing can't wait for a Tuesday appointment." Simone picked up her bag. "And I'll need to see every prescription you're on, every bottle, and the name of the doctor who signed them." At the word doctor, something crossed his face. Small, quick, filed away too fast to read. He gave her a name. Choi. Dr. Choi Sung-won. He handles everything. Everything's a lot for one man to handle. He came recommended. By who? Junso looked at the door where his cousin had stood. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Simone set her bag down again. She worked until the light through the window turned from gray to the flat white of full morning. She cleaned her hands, opened the supplies the house did have, found the ones it didn't, and made a list on the back of Mirel's notepad paper for the things she'd bring tomorrow. She dressed the sore, and the whole time she narrated what she was doing in a low, even voice. Not because he asked, but because a body that's been ignored heals faster when it hears itself being tended, and because it gave him somewhere to put his eyes that wasn't her face. Once, when the antiseptic bit, his hand closed hard on the arm of the chair, and his breath went thin through his teeth. She waited it out with him without saying sorry, because sorry would have made it about her mercy instead of his skin. You've done this to yourself 100 times in your head, she said, working. Braced for it worse than it is. That's the shoulder again. You carry pain up high because you can't feel it down low, so your whole top half stays clenched like a fist. She pressed the gauze flat. You'll sleep better once this closes. You haven't slept in weeks. It's in your face. Is that a nurse talking or a mother? Same job. She reached for the tape. You'd be surprised how often it's the same job. He was silent through most of the rest of it. Then, near the end, while she taped the last edge of the dressing, you could have taken the money. I could have. Most people would have. Most people don't have my mother. She smoothed the tape. 6 weeks' pay buys her heart pills 6 weeks. Then it's the 7th week and I'm back at a counter putting the expensive box down. 6 weeks isn't a solution, Mr. Hahn. It's a nap. She sat back on her heels. A job's a solution, so I'd rather do the job. He was quiet a while. The house made its expensive silence around them. There's a woman, Simone said, because something had been sitting at the edge of the room the whole morning, and she'd finally decided to name it. In the hall photo by the stairs, young, coming out of a car, your driver? His whole body changed, not a flinch. A settling, the way a room settles when the temperature drops. That's not your business. No, she agreed. But you flinched when I said the word doctor, and you went stone when I said the word neglect, and there's a photo in your hall of somebody nobody in this house has mentioned once, so I'm just telling you what a nurse sees. It's the same job as reading pill boxes. The driver's dead, Junso said. The plainness of it stopped her hands. She'd been folding a corner of tape and she left it half folded. His name was Sung Ho, Junso went on, quieter. He worked for the family 11 years. He knew my coffee order and my father's before me. And he drove me off a road one night and lived long enough to be pulled out and not long enough to say a word to anyone. You remember it? No. He said the word like it was a wound of its own. That's the part nobody believes. I remember getting in the car. Then I remember a ceiling in a hospital that wasn't mine. His hand moved on the wheel rim, restless. Everyone's told me the same story so many times it feels like mine. Brakes, wet road, his mistake, my legs. They say it's slow, like I'm a child, and then they change the subject to the vote. Who says it's slow? Choi says it's slow. Min Jae says it's slower. He caught himself, the way a man catches himself at the top of a stair. It doesn't matter. It matters to the widow who won't take your money. He didn't answer that. But his jaw worked again, once, and Simone filed it with the flinch at the word doctor and the stone at the word neglect. A small growing pile of things this house did not say out loud. The accident, he went on, staring at the covered window as if the curtain were still open. My accident. He was driving. He died on the road and I lived in this chair, and there's a widow across the city who won't take my money, and a company that wants me to disappear before a vote in 6 weeks, and a cousin who counts the days out loud when he thinks I can't hear. He turned his head, finally, and looked at her. You wanted to know what's wrong with the man who ran this house. That's the list. The wound's the least of it. Simone held his gaze and didn't reach for a single soft word, because he'd have hated a soft word, and because she didn't have one that wouldn't have been a lie. Okay, she said instead. We'll start with the wound. Down the hall, a phone buzzed once against wood, and stopped. Somewhere below, the front gate rolled open on its track, and a car she hadn't heard arrive rolled out, and in the courtyard Dae-hyun stood at the window with his back to the glass, watching the road for a man in a gray suit who had already gone, and who had, on his way down the stairs, paused at the photo by the landing, looked at it for exactly 1 second too long, and taken his phone from his pocket. Simone didn't see that part. She was upstairs, tearing the plastic off a fresh roll of tape, telling a man who hadn't let anyone touch him in a month to hold still. She wasn't finished yet. She had no idea how much of the house had already turned to watch her do it. The board meeting was in 3 days, and nobody had told Simone she was expected to be gone before it. She found out from the schedule pinned inside the medication cabinet, a laminated grid in Hae-rin's small handwriting. Physical therapy, meals, the standing conference call. Then a line at the bottom, Thursday, 10 in the morning, quarterly review, main floor, family and directors only. Someone had drawn a thin bracket beside it and written no staff. Simone was refilling the pill organizer when she read it. She kept her hands moving. Monday's slot, The beta-blocker equivalent Junso took for the strain on his heart. Then the anticoagulant separated out, moved to its own row, the way it should have been from the start. She finished Tuesday before she let herself look at the line again. Junso watched her from the chair by the window. "You saw it," he said. "I saw it. Min-jae writes those brackets." She snapped the last lid shut. "Then Min-jae can explain to me why a man who can't feel his legs is supposed to sit through 2 hours of people deciding his life without anyone in the room who checks his blood pressure." He almost smiled. It didn't reach anything. "You're not coming down." "I'm coming down," she said. "I'm your caregiver. You have a wound that needs pressure relief every 90 minutes. That's not a preference. That's the schedule they hired me to keep." "They didn't hire you. I did." "Then I keep your schedule." He looked at the grid, then at her. Something shifted behind his eyes. The same stillness she'd seen when she said the word negligence. A stone dropping into water and not surfacing. "You don't know these people," he said. "I know how they carry a caution board." She nodded at the cabinet, at the schedule, at the whole silent architecture of the house that had let a man rot in his own chair. "You learn a family by how they cut corners on the person who can't fight back." He didn't answer that, but when she wheeled him down the ramp 2 mornings later, he let her. The ramp was new. She'd noticed it the first night, the wood still pale where the varnish hadn't grayed, bolted over a staircase that had clearly been the only way up for years. Someone had built it after the accident. She wondered who had signed the invoice, and filed the question with the others. The main floor of the Han house was a long room with a table that seated 14. By 10 o'clock it seated 9. Min-jae sat at the head. Not the middle, the head, the chair that in every photograph on the staircase had belonged to the old man. He had a folder open in front of him, and a pen he wasn't using. When Simone rolled Junso to the near end, Min-jae looked up, and his gaze traveled the length of her. The scrubs, the badge, the roll of tape clipped at her hip, and settled back on his folder, as though he'd priced her, and moved on. "The caregiver waits outside," he said, to the room, not to her. "The caregiver stays with the patient," Simone said. A few heads turned, not many. 2 of the directors were old men who'd learned long ago to watch their own hands during trouble. One was a woman near the middle, gray suit, reading glasses pushed up into her hair, who looked at Simone the way you look at weather coming in. Min-jae set the pen down. "Miss Baptiste, this is a shareholders' matter. There are things discussed at this table that don't leave it." "Then don't discuss them near a woman changing a dressing," Simone said. "I'm not here for your table. I'm here for his back." Junso said nothing. His hands rested on the wheels, loose, and she watched the knuckles, because the knuckles told her more than his face did. They were pale. Min-jae let the silence run. He was good at it. He let it run until the 2 old men shifted, until the woman in gray glanced at the door, and then he smiled, small and clean. "Of course," he said. "By all means, stay and hold his hand." He turned to the room. "Let's begin. Item 1. The question we've all been polite enough not to say out loud." Hae-rin was at the far corner with her leather folder, a pen moving. Dae-hyun stood against the wall near the window, hands folded, the almost invisible earpiece catching light when he turned his head. Neither of them was on the guest list either, Simone thought. The people who counted things and the people who carried them. Nobody minded them in the room. It was only the woman with the tape they wanted gone. Min-jae read from the folder without looking down, which meant he'd memorized it. The succession vote is in 5.5 weeks. The bylaws are specific. Leadership of Haedong requires a principal who can appear, who can travel, who can stand before the partners in Busan and the partners in Singapore and not be carried into the room. He let Carried sit there. "I've said none of this to wound my cousin. I've said less than this for a year, out of respect. But respect isn't a business plan. Our partners are asking questions I can no longer answer with silence." One of the old men cleared his throat. "The medical opinion." "The medical opinion is on the table." Min-jae tapped the folder. "Dr. Choi's assessment. Complete spinal cord injury at the level of injury. Permanent. Total. I take no pleasure in it. But a company is not a hospice. We don't run Haedong on the hope that a paralyzed man walks." Simone's hand had gone still on the tape. Choi's assessment. She'd read enough charts to know what the words were doing. Complete. Total. Permanent. 3 words that closed a door and threw away the room behind it. She thought of the schedule with the anticoagulant stacked wrong, the wheelchair-bearing run dry, a man left 3 weeks with an open wound. The same care that wrote those words had written this one. She didn't say it. Not yet. She moved the tape from one hand to the other and looked at Junso's knuckles and waited. Min-jae was still talking. He was not a loud man. That was the danger of him. He built the case the way you build a wall, one flat stone at a time, and every stone was reasonable, and by the end you were on the wrong side of it and hadn't noticed the mortar going in. I'm not asking the board to remove him, he said, and the room breathed, and then he set the last stone. I'm asking my cousin to name a proxy, someone who can stand where he can't, someone the partners already trust. Himself. He didn't say himself. He didn't have to. The woman in gray spoke. And if he declines to name one? Then the bylaws decide for him, Min-jae said. A principal who cannot perform the duties of the office. There's a mechanism. I'd rather we never touch it. But it exists, and our partners know it exists, and every week we pretend otherwise costs us. He closed the folder. I love my cousin. That's why I won't let the company die of politeness. It was a good speech. Simone hated how good it was. Junso hadn't moved through any of it. He sat with his hands on the wheels and his eyes on the middle distance, and for a moment Simone thought he was gone somewhere, the way patients go when the room decides they aren't in it. Then he spoke, and his voice was flat and even, and carried further than Min-jae's had. Show me the assessment. Min-jae paused. Junso, you quoted it. Show me. Read the date. This isn't the forum. You made it the forum. Junso's hand came off the wheel. You read 3 words of a doctor's letter to 9 people who vote on my life. Read the 4th word. Read the date on it. Simone saw it then, the crack in Min-jae's rhythm, the half-second where the wall builder reached for a stone and it wasn't in his hand. He recovered. He always recovered. The date is immaterial. The condition is permanent. That's the meaning of the word. Permanent, Junso said. You like that word. It's Dr. Choi's word. It's the word you paid for. The room went very quiet. One of the old men put both hands flat on the table. Min-jae's face didn't change, and that was its own answer. A man accused falsely gets loud. A man accused accurately gets calm. Simone had sat in enough family rooms at enough bad bedsides to know the difference in her sleep. You're tired, Min-jae said gently. You're in pain, I understand. This is exactly why the burden shouldn't fall on you. He turned to the board, and his voice softened into concern, which was worse than the cruelty had been. You see what I'm trying to spare him. He can't even hear a medical fact without, look at him. Look at the state of him. This is a man they want signing contracts in Singapore. And he gestured, an open hand toward Junso, toward the chair, toward the whole ruin of him. A presentation, an exhibit. Here is the evidence. Here is why you should be afraid. That was the mistake. Simone had watched people be cruel in 100 quiet ways, and she'd learned to let most of it pass. Because most of it cost her patients nothing but pride, and pride heals. But there is a kind of cruelty that isn't aimed at wounding. It's aimed at using. Min-jae hadn't insulted Junso. He'd displayed him. He'd turned a man into a prop in an argument the man wasn't allowed to win, and he'd done it with a soft voice and an open hand, and the softness was the obscenity. She set the tape down on the arm of the chair. You want to know what he can do, she said. Every head turned. She hadn't raised her voice. She'd learned that too, from the mother who took her medication in a 3rd-floor apartment and never once shouted at the pharmacy that shorted her. Quiet carries in a room that's braced for noise. Min-jae's smile came back, thinner. Miss Baptiste, I don't believe you have standing at this table. I don't want standing, Simone said. I want 30 seconds. You've had 20 minutes to tell 9 people what he can't do. Give me 30 to show you what your doctor didn't check. This is theater. You built the theater. She was already moving. She locked the near wheel of the chair with her foot, a small mechanical click, and crouched so she was level with Junso's face, her back to the table, and for the length of one breath, the room ceased to exist, and it was only the 2 of them, the way it had been the first night over the wound. Look at me, she said, low, for him alone now. Not them, me. His eyes came to her, pale knuckles, a muscle working at the hinge of his jaw. Choi wrote complete, she said. Complete means nothing gets through. No signal, no sensation, nothing below the line. You told me the first night you feel the tape when I pull it off your back. You flinched. Complete injuries don't flinch, Junso. Somebody lied on your chart, and everybody in this house has been building your whole life on top of the lie. His breath changed. She felt it more than heard it. I'm not promising you walk, she said. I don't do that. I don't sell hope. You know I don't. But there's a difference between can't and won't be allowed to try. And your cousin just bet a company you can't tell them apart. Behind her, Min-jae's voice, sharp now, the first sharp note he'd let slip. That's enough. Dae-hyun, would you? Dae-hyun did not move from the wall. Simone kept her eyes on Junso. I need your arms, she said. That's all. Your arms are yours. We both know that. You push that chair around a house all day. I'm going to be your legs for what your legs can't do yet. You give me your arms and you give me 30 seconds of trust, and we find out together, in front of them, whether that word is true. If I fall, he said, and it was almost nothing, a breath with shape. You won't fall, she said. I'm under you. I don't drop people. Ask my mother. Something moved in his face that wasn't a smile, and was close to one. She stood. She unlocked the wheel, angled the chair away from the table into the open floor, and set the brake again. She stepped in front of him, planted her feet the way she'd been taught 15 years ago and had done 10,000 times since, in hospital rooms and cramped apartments, and once in a stairwell when the elevator failed. She bent her knees. She got her forearms under his, palm to palm, her grip closing over his wrists, his over hers. On me, she said. Not up. Into me. Let me take it, and you hold what you can hold. Ms. Baptiste, if he is injured on this floor, the liability. Stand for me, Simone said. She didn't say it loud. She said it the way you say the only thing that matters, and she pulled, her thighs and her back and the whole long training of her body, and she brought him up out of the chair. For a second it was all her. She knew it would be. His weight came onto her forearms, dead and total, and she held it, and the chair rolled an inch back on its brake and stopped, and Junso hung in her grip with his face inches from hers, and his breath ragged, and his eyes wide, a man being lifted, nothing more. And then it wasn't all her. She felt it before anyone saw it, a pressure through her forearms that changed direction. His weight, which had been falling, caught. Something in his legs answered. Not much. She would have sworn to it under oath, and she would have sworn to how small it was, a fraction, a tremor of muscle that hadn't been asked to work in 11 months, finding the old wiring and firing crooked, his knees taking a share of him. 5%, 10, enough that the load on her arms lightened, enough that for a breath he was not being held up but holding. The two of them braced together in the middle of the floor with the whole table risen half out of their chairs. His feet were under him, bearing, some of him standing on the legs a doctor had written off in ink. There, Simone breathed, so only he could hear it. There you are. He made a sound, not a word. She held him and he held, and the seconds ran. 3, 4, his arms shaking, sweat on his temple, the tendons standing in his neck beside the old dark line of the tattoo, and she counted them the way she counted everything, and at 6, she felt the tremor start to fail, the wiring overloading, and she took him back onto her arms before it could become a fall, and lowered him down, controlled, exact, into the chair. The brake held, he landed soft. Nobody in the room said anything. Junso was breathing like a man who'd run. His hands found the wheels and gripped them, white, and his head came up, and he looked past Simone at Min-jae, and there was something in his face that had not been there 20 minutes ago when they'd wheeled him down the new ramp. Not hope. She'd have worried if it was hope. It was worse than hope. For Min-jae, it was arithmetic. Simone straightened. Her own arms were shaking now, the delayed cost of the lift, and she let them, because the shake was hers to have, and nobody in the room got to see it as weakness. She turned to the table. Complete, she said. Total. Permanent. She let each word drop the way Min-jae had dropped carried. Your doctor put those 3 words on a legal document that 9 people are voting on. You just watch them be wrong. The woman in gray had come all the way to standing. That's not. She stopped, started again. Han Min-jae, did the assessment note any preserved motor function? The assessment is comprehensive. That's not what I asked. He shifted his weight, Min-jae said. That's not walking, a reflex, a spasm. She's a nurse, not a physician, and this is exactly the kind of false hope that… I'm a caregiver, Simone said, and I said he wasn't walking. I said your document says nothing gets through, and something got through, in front of you, and you're standing here calling it a spasm because you already know what it costs you if it's not. You are out of line. I'm under budget, Simone said. You gave me 30 seconds. I used 6. One of the old men laughed. It surprised out of him, short, and he covered it with his hand. But it had happened, and in a room Min-jae had spent 20 patient minutes building, it was a brick coming loose. Min-jae heard it. She watched him hear it. He closed the folder with both hands, slow, and when he looked up his face had gone back to the smooth, flat calm, the accused man's calm, and Simone understood that she had not won anything. She had only shown him he had a real fight, and men like Min-jae did not lose the fights they knew about. They lost the ones they didn't see. She'd just cost him surprise. She'd have to live with what he'd do to buy it back. This meeting is adjourned, Min-jae said. We reconvene when we can do so with medical facts and without spectacle. We reconvene, the woman in gray said, with a second opinion. She looked at Junso. If the chairman's son consents to an independent evaluation, this board will hear it before the vote. That's not procedure. It's a motion, she said. Is there a second? The old man who'd laughed raised one finger off the table. Min-jae looked at the two of them, and at the other directors, who had learned to watch their hands and were watching them now with new attention, and he did the arithmetic of his own, and Simone saw him decide not to fight a vote he might lose in front of witnesses. Noted, he said. We'll discuss the mechanics offline. Which meant no. Which meant he would find Dr. Choi before he found the board, and the two of them would decide together what an independent evaluation was allowed to conclude. Simone knew it the way she'd known about the wound. She looked at Dae-hyun against the wall, and Dae-hyun was already looking at Min-jae, and there was a stillness in the big man's face that she filed away with everything else. The directors began to gather their things. The woman in gray stopped by the chair on her way out. She looked at Junso, and then at Simone, and she said, Quiet. Where did they find you? A pharmacy in Flatbush shorted my mother's heart pills, Simone said, so I answered a job listing. The woman almost smiled. Keep the receipt, she said, and left. Then it was Min-jae. He came around the table on his way to the door, and he stopped in front of Simone, close, and he was taller than her by a hand, and he used it, and his voice when it came was pitched for her alone, gentle, almost kind, which was how she knew it was the real one. That was well done, he said, genuinely. You have a gift for the room. Thank you. He's going to believe you now. You understand that. He's going to believe there's a door, and he's going to throw himself at it. And every day, it doesn't open, a little more of him is going to die. And it will be your name, he says while it happens. He tilted his head. I've watched him grieve his legs for a year. I finally got him to the far side of it, and you walked in from a bus stop and handed him back the one thing that will destroy him, hope with no floor under it. You don't grieve a thing that isn't dead, Simone said. You just get quiet enough to hear it moving. He heard it, you heard it too. That's what scared you. Min-jae's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. A light going out and a colder one coming on. Be careful on the stairs, he said pleasantly. Old house, the photographs on the landing especially. People stop to look at them and forget where they're standing. He nodded at her, courteous, and was gone. She stood there a second, with her arms still faintly shaking. The photographs on the landing. He'd named the exact spot. The wall she'd passed on the first night, the young woman stepping out of a car, the face nobody in the house had a name for. He'd told her to be careful of it, the way you tell someone to be careful of a thing you've already decided to use against them. She turned back to Junso. The room had emptied around them, Hae-rin gathering papers at the far end with her eyes down and her pen still, Dae-hyun peeling off the wall. Junso was looking at his own hands, then at his legs, then at her. It was real, he said. What I felt, It was real. It was real, Choi said. I know what Choi said. She crouched again, level with him, the way she kept ending up. And now you know what your body says, and the two don't match. And there's exactly one reason a doctor writes complete on a man who flinches. Somebody needed you to stop trying. His jaw worked. Min Jae. I didn't say a name, Simone said. I said somebody. There's a difference, and it matters, because if we get the name wrong, we lose everything, and if we say it out loud too soon, we lose it faster. She glanced at Hae-rin, at Dae-hyun, at the long empty table where 9 people had just watched a lie develop a crack. You have 5.5 weeks. You just spent your surprise. Now every corner of this house knows you might get up, and the person who made sure you couldn't knows it too, and he's already halfway to Choi's office to make certain the next doctor writes the same 3 words. Junso's hands closed on the wheels. Then we get to a doctor first. We get to a doctor first, she agreed. One he can't reach. One who owes nobody in this family anything. She stood, picked the roll of tape up off the arm of the chair, where she'd set it down before all of it, and clipped it back at her hip. But not today. Today you did more with your legs than you've done in a year, and if you don't rest that spine, the wound's going to open, and hand Choi his I told you so on a plate. Simone. It was the first time he'd used her name. Yeah, she said. He looked at her for a long moment, and whatever he was going to say he didn't, and instead he said, the landing. He warned you about the landing. He did. There's a photograph there. His voice had dropped. I've asked 3 people who she is. Nobody will tell me. Simone went still. Outside the long windows, a car door shut, then another, the directors leaving, the house exhaling back into its silence. She thought of Min Jae pausing on those stairs the first night, the phone coming out of his pocket, a thing the whole audience had seen, and no one in this room knew about. Then she's the next thing we find out, Simone said, after the doctor, before the vote. She got behind the chair, released the brake, and turned him toward the ramp, and neither of them looked at the staircase or the wall of photographs at its turn, because they didn't have to. They both knew now that the woman on the landing was going to matter. They just didn't know she was already the reason a man had died, and that the phone in Min Jae's pocket that first night had been pointed at her face. Simone pushed him up the new pale wood of the ramp, and the house watched them go, and somewhere behind a closed door on the main floor a phone was already dialing a doctor's private line. Simone found the doctor's name in a place Min Jae would never think to look. Not in a file, in the margin of a hospital discharge sheet, 3 lines from the bottom, a scribble in a hand that was not Choi's. Lee Eun-ji, physiatry, and a phone number with a foreign country code crossed out and rewritten. Someone had wanted to call this woman once and had been talked out of it. She copied the number onto the inside of her own wrist with a pen and rolled her sleeve down over it. It was the 3rd morning after the meeting. The house had gone quiet in the way houses go quiet when everyone in them is waiting for the same thing from a different room. Simone turned Junso at his 90-minute mark, checked the dressing, and found the wound smaller, 2 millimeters. To her it was a headline. You called someone, Junso said. Not a question. He had learned the trick from her. I found someone to call. The family knows every doctor in this city. Then I'll find one the family forgot to buy. He watched her tape the edge down. His hand had stopped gripping the armrest during dressing changes. Small thing. She noticed all the small things now, kept them like coins. Her name was in your chart, Simone said. Written and unwritten. Somebody nearly brought her in and then didn't. Choi handles the specialists. That's the point. She made the call from the far end of the garden, past the range of the house, her back to the cameras she had counted on her second day. 4 of them. She stood where none could read her mouth. The woman who answered had a flat, careful voice, the voice of someone who had been burned by phones before. Simone gave no names. She described a wound, a bylaw, a report that said complete when the body said otherwise. She described 6 seconds of a man holding part of his own weight. There was a long silence on the line. Who signed the injury classification? The woman asked. Choi Sung-won. The silence came back, longer. I'll come to you, Lee Eun-ji said. Not the clinic. Nowhere with his name on the door. She came the next evening in a car with no crest on it, and she came dressed like a woman visiting a friend. No white coat, a leather bag instead of a case. Daehyun met her at the gate. Simone had asked him to, and he had looked at her for a moment too long before he agreed, and she had filed that look with the coins. No log, Simone told him. There's always a log. Then leave her off it. Daehyun's jaw worked. The scar over his eyebrow pulled when he was deciding something. One visit, he said. I didn't see anyone. Yoonji set her bag on the bench by Junso's bed and did not open it right away. She looked at him first, not at the chair, not at his legs, at his face. You're the exhibit, she said. Junso's mouth twitched. That word travels. It should insult you enough to help me. She snapped gloves on. Lie down. I'm going to touch places and you're going to lie to me. Because everyone lies to physiatrists. And I'm going to catch you. Simone moved to the far side of the bed and became a second pair of hands without being asked. They worked over him for an hour. Yoonji ran a wheel with teeth along the soles of his feet, up the calves, the backs of the thighs. She pressed a tuning fork to the bone at his ankle and asked him to say the exact second the buzzing stopped. She had him close his eyes while she moved his big toe up and down and made him name the direction. Up, down, up. He got them right more than a guessing man would. Down, down, he said. Yoonji had moved it up. She did it again from a different angle. He missed again, then caught 3 in a row. Patchy, she murmured. It's patchy. She kept working. She pinched the skin over his shin and asked sharp or dull, and he answered. And half the time he was right, and the half he was wrong was not the half a healthy man would be wrong. She dragged the wheel from the knee toward the ankle and asked him to tell her when the feeling changed, and there was a band, a hand's width above the ankle, where his face went blank and stayed blank, and below it where it came back in pieces. There, Yoonji said, marking nothing on paper, marking it on Simone's face instead. That's the level. And below the level there's an island of you that never got the memo it was supposed to be dead. Junso lay with his forearm over his eyes. Say it plainer, he said. You feel your own feet. Not all of them. Enough that the report is a lie. Simone looked down at the tracks the wheel had left. She thought of the box of pills loaded wrong, the chair left dry, the wound left open. None of it had been enough to kill him. All of it had been enough to keep him small. A man kept in enough pain stops asking questions about the pain. A man told his cord is severed stops testing whether it is. The neglect and the diagnosis were not 2 crimes. They were one hand, working the same patient, keeping him down until a vote could pass over his body. He wasn't treating you, she said quietly. He was maintaining you, like a lock somebody wanted kept shut. Is that bad? Junso asked. It's the opposite of what your chart says, which makes it wonderful and dangerous. She had him push against her palms. She braced his knee and told him to straighten the leg, and she watched the muscle above the kneecap, not the leg itself, and Simone watched Yoonji's face and saw something move behind the glasses. Again, Yoonji said. The muscle jumped, fired, held, faded. Again. It fired. Yoonji sat back on the stool and pulled her glasses off and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. When she looked up, she looked at Simone, not at Junso, the way people share a weight with the one who will have to carry it. His injury is incomplete, she said. Below the level of the lesion, there's preserved sensation and there's motor signal. Not everywhere, in pieces, but the cord is not severed, and it never was. The room held very still. Say the rest, Junso said. Yoonji put the glasses back on. A complete lesion is a wall. Nothing crosses it, and nothing ever will, and you stop spending money on it. An incomplete lesion is a road with holes in it. Some signals get across. With work, months of the right work, more of them can learn the way over. She paused. Somebody classified a road as a wall. Could that be a mistake? Simone asked, though she knew. On day 1, in a trauma bay, with swelling hiding everything, a defensible mistake. Yoonji zipped the bag. But you don't re-examine at week 2 and week 6 and keep writing complete. Not by accident. The swelling comes down, the picture changes. His picture changed and the word never did. Junso lay looking at the ceiling. The teeth of the little wheel had left pink tracks on his feet that he had felt every one of. He wrote a wall, he said, so nobody would build a road. So nobody would try, Yoonji said. A man who's told the door is welded doesn't waste his life pushing on it. Simone thought of the flinch. The first night, the tape on his back, the word medical landing on him like a hand. She understood now that the flinch was not fear of doctors. It was the body remembering it had been told to stop feeling and had refused. Yoonji laid it out on the bed like a map, because she would not put any of it on paper that could be found. There would be no cure. She said the word twice so it would stick, cure, and put a line through it in the air. Nobody was walking out of here whole, but an incomplete injury with preserved signal could be trained. Standing with support, weight-bearing to wake the sleeping muscle. Hours of it, brutal and unglamorous, the kind of work that produced almost nothing for weeks, and then produced a step. How long to something the board can see? Simone asked. The board. Yoonji's mouth thinned. That's the ugly part. Real progress is 6 months, a year. You're asking me to build a bridge on a deadline. The vote is in 5 weeks, Junso said. The number sat in the room like a dropped stone. 5, Yoonji repeated. 5 and change. It was 6. He turned his head toward Simone. It was 6 when you came. It's 5 now. Simone felt the cold come up the back of her neck. She had counted the days too. The schedule on the medication cabinet, the laminated one in Hae-rin's hand, had said one thing. The meeting had said 5.5. And now Junso said 5. He's moving it, she said. He can't just move it, Junso said, but his voice had a question in it. He wrote the brackets. Simone stood. He decides who's in the room and when the room happens. If he can pull the date closer, he takes weeks off whatever you build. Yoonji watched the two of them. Then we don't build for the board, she said slowly. That's a trap. If you chase a date he controls, he'll keep pulling it until you fail on schedule. Then what do we build? Proof. Yoonji tapped the map that wasn't there. Not a man who walks. A man whose own medical record convicts the doctor who wrote it. The standing is the bait. The chart is the knife. She looked at Junso. You don't have to beat the deadline. You have to make the deadline meaningless by proving the ground it stands on is a lie. Simone felt the shape of it settle. Not a rehab, an alliance. The nurse who saw, the doctor who could name what she saw, and the man they were both circling, held together by a single fact that had to stay secret until it could be dropped in one piece. Nobody knows, Yoonji said. Not the contadora, not the security. Daehyun let you in. Daehyun let a friend in for tea. Yoonji stood. Keep it that way. The moment Choi hears his classification is being re-examined, the record gets clean, amended, backdated, whatever he needs it to say. Right now the lie is frozen, because he thinks nobody's looking. Look quietly. They started that night. Simone cleared the rug from the center of the room and dragged the bed frame to give them a rail. Yoonji had left a list, no letterhead, folded small, what to do, how long, what to stop for. The first thing on it was the simplest and the worst. Stand, hold, sit, again. She braced his chair against the wall so it could not roll. She set her feet the way she'd set them in the boardroom, outside of his, and slid her forearms under his the same way, palm to palm, wrists locking. Not for them this time, she said. For the muscle. It has to remember it has a job. And if it doesn't remember, then we remind it every night until it's embarrassed. He almost smiled. She counted 3 and lifted. It was harder than the boardroom because in the boardroom it had lasted 6 seconds and then she'd let the moment win. Now she made him hold. 4 seconds. 5. She watched the thigh, the way Yoonji had taught her in 1 hour, watched for the muscle to take even a coin of the weight. At 7 seconds his leg shook and she would have sworn in court she felt, an ounce leave her arms and go into the floor through him. There, she breathed, that's yours. Then it was gone and he sagged and she took all of him again and lowered him, controlled, the way you set down something that broke once already. He was gray and sweating. His hands would not stop trembling. He gripped the armrest and she let him, because some trembling is the body counting the cost, and some is the body sending a bill upstairs. And after tonight, she would learn to tell them apart. How many of those, he said when he could speak. Tonight? That was one. He laughed, a short cracked sound. How many total? To make your knife? I don't know yet. She wiped his face with the towel. A lot. Every night. And you're going to want to quit around night 4, because that's when it hurts and nothing shows, and you'll decide it isn't working. And you'll say? I'll say the wound was invisible too, and I've watched it close 2 millimeters at a time. She met his eyes. You don't get to decide it's not working. You don't know how to read the muscle. I do. That's the deal. Something crossed his face that she hadn't seen on it before. Not gratitude. He was not a man who did gratitude yet. It was closer to the look a man gives a door he's been told is welded, when he hears, for the first time, a sound on the other side. 2 years, he said. What about them? 2 years I've been a weight in a chair. Choi told me the number, and I believed the number because a doctor said it, and doctors don't lie for money. He let out a breath that shook. I stopped trying the first month. I let them lift me. I let them carry the caregivers in and out like they were changing sheets. I signed whatever kept the pain down. His hand found the armrest and this time gripped it. I built the wall higher than he did. I helped him. Simone crouched to his level. Then you're the only one who can tear it down, she said, because you know exactly where you laid every brick. Twice more they lifted. The third time he lasted 9 seconds and cursed in Korean, and she took it as progress. She got him to the bed, cleaned him, changed the dressing that had held through all of it, and sat with him in the dark while his breathing came down. Tell me about her, Simone said. Who? The woman in the photograph, on the landing. She felt him go rigid. You asked 3 people. I'm the 4th, and I'm the one who isn't afraid of the answer. I don't know who she is. That's the truth. I've walked past her my whole life and I don't have a name. His voice was flat, but Min-jae named the exact frame, to you, as a threat. So she's a lock, and he thinks I don't have the key, and he wants to keep it that way. Then she's in the record too, Simone said. The way Yoon-ji was, written and crossed out. She would look. She had already decided, but not tonight, because tonight there was a rule she was making up as she went, which was that you did not open 2 locked doors in one dark. She stood to go, and he caught her wrist. His grip was weak from the lifting, and that was the only reason she let it hold. If Choi finds out we looked, he said, he cleans the chart. You heard her. He doesn't find out. Everyone in this house reports to someone. Then we don't tell the house. She loosened his fingers gently, one at a time, the way she'd loosened them from the armrest. We tell the muscle, and the muscle can't talk. Hae-rin was on the stairs when Simone came down for water at midnight. She was sitting 3 steps from the bottom in the dark with a folder open across her knees and a pen light in her teeth. And she froze when the hall light found her, the way a person freezes when the thing they are doing has a name they don't want said out loud. Simone stopped on the landing. Above Hae-rin's head, framed, the young woman got out of the car forever. Late for numbers, Simone said. Hae-rin took the pen light out of her mouth. The quarterly's a mess. Min-jae wants it moved up. She closed the folder over her thumb, keeping a place. Everything's being moved up. The vote too. Hae-rin's eyes flicked, just once, toward the top of the stairs where Jun-so's door was. I only see the calendar, she said. I don't set it. But you saw it change. The contadora was quiet. Down the hall a clock ticked. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped under the reach of the house. There's a mechanism in the bylaws, Hae-rin said. If the principal can't perform, and there's no proxy named, leadership passes by director's resolution. Min-jae's counsel filed to invoke it early. On grounds of medical incapacity. She looked at Simone. The grounds are a doctor's letter. 1 letter. Complete, total, permanent. Choi's 3 words. Simone felt them line up like tumblers. When's the new date? She said. Not set. He needs the directors to seat the resolution first. Hae-rin stood, gathering the folder to her chest. But the woman in the gray suit, she seconded a motion he didn't want. So he's counting again. Every day he counts I move a number. She was already climbing past Simone, close, quiet. You made him count wrong once. In the boardroom. Do it again and do it soon, because a man who's counting will pull the whole thing forward the second he thinks he'll lose. She went up 2 steps and stopped and did not turn around. That letter's the only leg he's standing on, Hayrin said. If it's a lie, the whole thing balances on. Then she was gone up into the dark, and Simone stood alone on the landing under the photograph, holding an empty glass, understanding that she had just been handed something, and not sure yet whether it was help or a hook. Because Hayrin worked for the family. Hayrin's letter, the laminated one, had the brackets in it, and people who hand you the exact weak point of the man who signs their checks are either brave or bait, and Simone had not lived 29 years in rooms like this by assuming brave. She turned the glass in her hand and did the arithmetic she'd been doing since the pharmacy. If Hayrin was real, she was a second witness inside the house, someone who touched every number Min-jae moved. If Hayrin was bait, then Min-jae now knew Simone would reach for the letter, and had put the letter within reach on purpose. Either way, the answer was the same. Move faster, say less. Build the knife where only the muscle could see it. She looked at the photograph before she went up. Really looked, for the first time, the way Yoon-ji had looked at Jun-so. Not at the frame, at the face. A young woman, maybe 25, mid-step out of a black car, one hand still on the door, caught turning toward whoever held the camera. Not a posed portrait, a snapshot blown up and framed, which was a strange thing to do, to take a candid and hang it in a hall of oil paintings and lineage. Somebody had wanted her on this wall, and Min-jae had pointed a stranger at her and called it a warning. A candid, blown up, framed in a hall of oil. You did that for one reason. You did it to mourn. This was not a portrait of a member of the family. It was a photograph someone had kept because it was the last one they had. Simone filed the face with the coins and went up the stairs. The next 3 nights they lifted, and the body sent its bill. Night 2 he lasted the same 9 seconds and no more, and she watched his face fold when the number didn't climb. It went backward, he said. It went nowhere. Nowhere is not backward. She reset his feet. Again. Night 3. The wound wept a little from the strain, and she nearly stopped the whole program. And Yoon-ji, reached at the far end of the garden, said keep going. Drop the reps. Protect the skin. The wound and the walking are the same project now. And Simone hung up and went back in, and cut the lifts in half, and made the halves count. Night 4 came exactly as she'd promised it would. He wouldn't set his feet. He sat with his hands flat on the armrests and looked at the cleared rug like it had insulted him. There's nothing, he said. 4 nights, 9 seconds, the same 9 seconds. It's the reflex. It's the spasm. Min-jae was right. You're building me a... Push your right foot into my hand. Simone. Push. She'd knelt and put her palm against the ball of his foot without warning him which foot, and out of pure irritation he pushed, and the push was there, weak and real, against her hand. You felt which foot I asked for, she said quietly. 4 nights ago you couldn't tell up from down when your eyes were closed. Yoon-ji moved your toe and you guessed. Tonight you found my hand in the dark on the correct foot on the first try. She sat back on her heels. The muscle isn't loud yet. It's learning to whisper on time. That's the whole game. Loud comes later, on time comes first. He stared at her. His anger had nowhere to go, and it drained out of him and left the tiredness under it. Whisper on time, he repeated, testing it. And Choi wrote that there was no signal at all. Choi wrote a wall. You just found my hand in the dark. She held his eyes. One of you is lying, and it isn't the foot. You planned that, he said. The push. You baited me. I bait you every night. You just usually don't notice. She stood and offered her forearms. Now stand up and be embarrassed for me. He set his feet. They did not hear the car. Later, Simone would go back over it and understand that the car had come in with its lights off, and that a man who wants to know what happens in a house after midnight learns to arrive without headlights. But at the time she only heard the front door, far off, and then the particular silence of Daehyun not stopping someone. She had Jun-so up. 7 seconds in, weight sharing through the shaking legs, the best hold of the 4 nights, and she would not drop it for a door. The handle turned. Min-jae stood in the frame in a charcoal coat, keys still in his hand, and looked at the two of them in the cleared center of the room. The nurse braced, the cousin standing, held, but standing, sweat on his face and his own feet under him for the 8th second, the 9th. Nobody moved. The clock in the hall counted for all of them. "Well," Min-jae said, very softly, and something in his voice had gone smooth and final, the sound a man makes when a suspicion becomes a fact he can use. He looked from Junso's feet to Simone's face, and then he looked, for exactly one breath, at his own watch. Reading the hour, or reading the days, she could not tell which, and it did not matter, because either way she watched a man decide to move the number again, and this time to move it fast. He put the keys in his pocket. "You've been busy," he said, and stepped into the room, and pulled the door shut behind him with a click that closed off the hall, the house, and every witness in it. The click of the lock was the loudest sound in the room. Simone lowered Junso the last inch into the chair, controlled, both her forearms burning, and she did not turn around. She kept her hands where they were, palms under his, the way Yoonji had taught her. Whatever Min-jae had walked in to see, she wanted him to see it end the way she chose, not the way fear chose. "Leave your hands there," she said. Low, meant only for Junso. He obeyed. Min-jae crossed to the window instead of the bed. He looked at the garden, at the 4 cameras Simone had counted on the second day, at nothing. When he spoke, his voice was almost warm. 2 years, he said. 2 years I paid for the best care in the country, and a woman from a pharmacy in Flatbush does in a week what none of them managed. I didn't manage anything, Simone said. I stopped the people who were unmanaging him. He turned. He was smiling. That was the part that put a stone in her chest, worse than shouting would have. A man who has just seen his whole plan crack does not smile unless he still believes he holds the pieces. You think I'm angry? He tugged the cuff of his sleeve straight. I'm relieved, truly. My cousin can hold a fraction of his weight for 9 seconds. That's wonderful. That's a miracle. He let the word sit. It will make such a moving story at the resolution hearing. The devoted caregiver who gave a broken man hope. Everyone will weep. And then the doctors, real doctors with letterhead, will explain that hope is not the same as function, and the vote will proceed. Junso's jaw worked. Get out of my room. It's the family's house. Get out of my room. Min-jae inclined his head, a small courtly thing, and walked to the door. His hand was on the handle when Simone spoke. You came in with your keys out, she said. He stopped. You were leaving. You saw the light under the door, and you turned around and came back up. She kept her voice flat, a nurse reading a chart. That's not a man who's relieved. That's a man checking on his own work. For 1 second the smile was gone. Then it came back, thinner. Careful on the stairs, he said, and left, and this time the door stayed open, which was worse, because it meant he no longer thought a shut door mattered. Junso let his hands drop. He was gray, soaked through, shaking from the effort still ringing in his legs. He'll move the vote up again. He can't, not without the resolution seated first. She wiped his forehead with the towel from the rail. Hayrin told us. He needs the letter to be the only leg it stands on, which means the letter is where we hit. We can't get to Choi's file. He'll scrub it the second he smells us. I know. She crouched to check the dressing at his hip, peeled the edge, looked. The wound was still smaller. A day's worth of smaller. So we don't go at the letter first. We go at the thing the letter is standing on top of. He frowned. The injury? The accident. She pressed the tape back down. Every lie in this house is built on one night. The night you don't remember. Choi got in because of the crash. Min-jae got his opening because of the crash. Your driver died in the crash. She sat back on her heels. I keep going to the top of the pile. The letter, the vote, the mechanism. I should have started at the bottom. Junso was quiet. Then, there's nothing to find. Wet road, failed brakes, driver error. I've read the report 100 times. You've read the report Choi and Min-jae handed you. She stood. I haven't read anything. The envelope came 2 days later, and it was not the one she was waiting for. It arrived by courier, thick, cream stock, her own name printed on it, Simone Baptiste, which no one in this house had ever bothered to spell right on a schedule. She opened it standing in the kitchen. Inside was a single sheet and a check. The sheet was from a firm she didn't recognize. It said, in the flat language of money, that the outstanding medical debts registered to one Mireille Baptiste, 6 prescriptions, a cardiology copay, a lab balance from March, had been reviewed, and were eligible for full settlement, at the discretion of the undersigned benefactor, pending the recipient's acceptance of the enclosed terms. The check was made out to the pharmacy in Flatbush. The amount covered every dollar her mother owed and more, enough to fill the entresto for a year, enough to stop counting ounces of medicine on a bus. She read the terms. They were short. She admired that, in the cold way you admire a clean incision. Acceptance of settlement constitutes acknowledgement that the caregiver's engagement is concluded as of the date of acceptance, and that the caregiver waives any further claim, statement, or testimony regarding the household, its members, or the medical circumstances of Mr. Han Jun-so. There was no name on the benefactor line. There didn't need to be. She stood in the kitchen for a long time. She thought about her mother on the 3rd floor, taking 4 of 6 pills, splitting the beta blocker with a paring knife on Tuesdays because a whole one lasted longer that way. She thought about the $42 in cash on the pharmacy counter. She thought about the woman in the gray suit at the board table who had said, "Keep the receipt," and how she'd meant a different receipt, but maybe not. Then she put the check back in the envelope. She didn't tear it. A torn check is a gesture, and gestures were what Min-jae fed on. She slid it flat into the inside zip pocket of her bag, the one that closed, and she zipped it. Not to keep, to hold. Evidence has to be kept intact. She found Hae-rin in the small office off the landing, under the photograph, 3 ledgers open. "Did you process a settlement request through the household accounts this week?" Simone asked. "Medical. External beneficiary." Hae-rin's pen stopped. "No." "Would it go through you?" "Everything goes through me." Hae-rin's eyes moved to the envelope corner sticking from Simone's bag. "Almost everything." A pause. "Someone paid out of a personal vehicle, not the family accounts. That's deliberate. Off my books means off any book a lawyer could later pull. His own money. Or a company he controls that isn't on the family's disclosure." Hae-rin set the pen down entirely now. "Did you take it?" "No." Something in Hae-rin's shoulders came down half an inch. She looked, for a second, less like a woman guarding a door, and more like a woman who'd been holding her breath for months. "That was a lot of money," she said. "For your mother." "It was." Simone didn't soften it. "That's how I know it wasn't a gift." She went to Jun-so that night, with the envelope on the blanket between them, and told him what it bought and what it demanded. She watched his face do the math she'd already done. The year of medicine, the mother, the bus, and then close. "Take it," he said. She looked at him. "Take the money, Simone. Fill her prescriptions." "I'll find another." "No. It's my fault you're even in this. If something happens to your mother because you're up here holding my legs at 2 in the morning. You don't get to spend my mother," she said. Quiet. It stopped him harder than volume would have. "He offered me the same thing the first night. Not for her. For me. Pay the whole contract, go home, never come back. I said no when it was just money. It's still just money. It's only wearing my mother's name now, because he found out that's the one price I might actually feel." Jun-so's hand closed on the blanket. "He didn't send this because he's afraid of 9 seconds, she went on. "He sent it because he's afraid of what I'll say. Read the terms. I waive any statement or testimony about the medical circumstances." She tapped the paper. "He's not buying my exit. He's buying my silence. And a man doesn't pay to silence a caregiver." She let it land. "He pays to silence a witness, which means somewhere there's something for me to witness." The room was still. "The accident," Jun-so said. "The accident." She folded the envelope away. "I want everything. The police report, the insurance file, Sung-ho's employment record, the car. Where's the car?" "Scrapped, months ago." Of course it was, she thought. The widow. Jun-so went very quiet. "Sun Young, she refused your money." Simone said it carefully. "You told me the first night. A widow who won't take a dime from the family of the man who was driving when her husband died. People take the money. Jun-so, even when they hate you, they take it. Because grief is expensive." She didn't. She leaned in. Why would a grieving woman turn down money she needs, unless taking it would mean agreeing to something she knows isn't true? Getting to Park Sun-young was the first thing they did without telling the house. Dae-hyun drove. That was the second thing, because Simone asked him, in the garden, out of the camera's arc, And she watched his face while she asked, and what she watched for was the pause. The night Yoonji came, he'd left her off the log. The night of the training, he hadn't stopped a car with its headlights off. 2 silences. She needed to know if they were loyalty or a leash. Mr. Han asked you to drive Ms. Baptiste on a personal errand, he said, flat, when she finished. Not a question, a sentence he was building for later, for whoever asked him. He was giving himself the cover before she asked for it. He did, Simone said. Daehyun looked at the house. The scar over his eyebrow caught the light. Sung-ho trained me, he said, and that was all he said, and it was enough. He went to get the keys. Sun Young lived 2 hours out, in a low building the color of wet cardboard, a cardigan the color of earth pulled tight, even though the evening was warm. She had a small round face and eyes that had done all their crying already. She knew who Simone was before Simone finished her name. She looked past her, at Daehyun by the car, and something crossed her face. You drove for him too, she said to Daehyun. Sung-ho was my friend. She let them in. The apartment was clean and bare in the way of a place where half the furniture left with the person. A ring hung on a fine chain at her throat. Her husband's, Simone understood. Too big for her finger, kept close another way. Sun Young made tea she didn't drink and sat with her hands around the cup. I won't take his money, she said, before Simone asked anything. I know. I want to understand why. Because taking it means he was driving badly. Means the road was wet and my husband... Her voice caught, held. Means my husband didn't check the car. And Sung-ho checked the car. Every morning. 11 years. He checked that car like it was a child. Her jaw set. The paper says brake failure. My husband would have known if the brakes were going. He'd have said, he said everything about that car. He came home talking about that car. Simone kept her voice even. Did he say anything about the brakes, before? Sun Young got up. She went to a drawer and took out a shoebox, and from the shoebox a folded square of receipts, and she set them on the table one by one like cards. 2 weeks before, she said, he had the brakes done, all of it, pads, lines, fluid. Look at the date. Her finger, trembling on the print. He paid out of his own wage first and the family reimbursed him later. That was how it worked, so I have the receipt. 2 weeks. And they tell me the brakes failed. She sat back down, hard. New brakes don't fail in 2 weeks. Not on a car Sung-ho drove. Simone looked at the date. She looked at the shop's name printed at the top. She held very still, because the stone in her chest had just turned over and become something else. Can I photograph these? Take them. Sun Young pushed the whole square across the table. I kept them for a year and nobody wanted them. Nobody came. His lawyer sent a letter with a number in it and I sent it back. Then another man came, not a lawyer, a man in a gray suit, and he was very kind, and he told me I was making myself sick, that grief plays tricks, that the report was the report. Her hands were flat on the table now, pressing, as if to keep them from shaking. He gave me his card. He said if I ever wanted to be at peace, I should call. I threw it away. Then I took it out of the trash and I kept it, because I thought, if something ever happens to me... She stopped. Simone said, gently, do you still have the card? Sun Young looked at her for a long moment. Then she reached into the pocket of the earth-colored cardigan, and Simone understood she had been carrying it there, against her body, the way she carried the ring. She put it on the table face down and slid it across with one finger, and did not look at it. Simone turned it over. She read the name. She read it twice, the way she'd read the note in the envelope, the way she read everything now, once to see it and once to believe it. She did not say it out loud. She put the card in the zip pocket with the check, and she felt the 2 pieces of paper settle against each other like they'd been made to sit together. You've been afraid a long time, Simone said. Since the funeral. Sun Young's voice was thin. Since the man in the gray suit knew what medicine I was on before I told him. Simone let that sit between them. A widow, 2 hours out of the city, no connection to the family beyond a dead husband, and a stranger who arrived already knowing the contents of her medicine cabinet. She thought of Min Jae on the first night, the phone he'd lifted at the photograph. She hadn't seen it then. No one had told her. But she'd learned the shape of the man well enough now to know he collected people the way other men collected watches. Not to wear, to have, in case. Has he come back? Simone asked. The gray suit. Twice. Sun Young turned the cup in her hands without drinking. Always kind. Always the same words. Peace, rest. Let it go. The last time he stood at my door longer than he needed to. He looked at the lock. Her mouth thinned. I bought a second one the next day. From my own money, I don't have much money. You did the right thing keeping these, Simone said, touching the receipts. I kept them for a ghost. Sun Young's eyes came up, and for the first time there was something in them that was not only grief. You're not a ghost. You came in a car with a man my husband trusted, and you looked at the date before you looked at me. She pushed the shoebox an inch closer. Take whatever's in here. All of it, just, when it's time. Say his name out loud. Somebody should. I've been saying it to an empty room for a year, and the room doesn't answer. They drove back mostly in silence. The receipts were a small square weight in Simone's bag, and they felt like the heaviest thing she'd ever carried. You heard her, Simone said, halfway back. Daehyun's eyes stayed on the road. I heard her. 2 weeks. New lines, new pads. I heard her. Say the thing you're not saying. His hands moved on the wheel. When he spoke, it came out rusted, like a door that hadn't opened in a while. The car went to the scrapyard 9 days after. 9 days. I logged the pickup. I didn't think about it. Cars go to scrap, but a car in a fatal, with an open insurance claim, doesn't get crushed in 9 days. It sits. Months. Years, sometimes. While they fight over money. He exhaled. Somebody paid to make it disappear before anybody could look at the brakes. Do you have the pickup log? I have the pickup log. A beat. I have the gate log too. Every car in, every car out, 2 years back. I keep 2 copies. One where Hae-rin can see it, one where nobody can. Simone looked at the side of his face, the scar, the stillness she'd once mistaken for indifference. Why 2 copies? Because Sung-ho told me to, the week before he died. Daehyun's jaw flexed. He said the numbers on the maintenance invoices stopped matching the work. He said he was going to talk to Mr. Han about it when he got back from the trip. He turned off the highway. He never got back from the trip. The stone in Simone's chest finished its turn and settled, cold and clear, into something she finally had a name for. Not guilt. Sabotage. She laid it out that night in Jun-so's room, past midnight, the 4 of them, because she'd asked Hae-rin to come up, and Hae-rin had come, ledger under her arm, and Daehyun stood by the door with his gate log rolled in his fist, and Jun-so sat forward in the chair, with his elbows on his knees, and for the first time the room did not feel like a sick room. It felt like a table. Everything we've been fighting is downstream, Simone said. She'd taken a sheet of Jun-so's notepaper and drawn a line down the middle, and she wasn't going to show it to anyone. It was just to make her own hand slow down. The letter, the vote, the mechanism, we keep trying to knock those over, but look what holds them up. She set the widow's receipts on the blanket. New brakes, 2 weeks before. Beside them, Daehyun's log, unrolled. Car scrapped in 9 days. She didn't put the card down. She kept that one in the bag. And a driver who told 2 people, separately, that the maintenance invoices had stopped matching the work, and who died before he could say it, to the one person who'd believe him. Hae-rin had gone pale. The invoices go through me, she said. The maintenance invoices, I pay them. Her hand had come up to her mouth. I pay them off a schedule Choi's office approves. Why would I check a break line? I'm a bookkeeper. I match the number to the approval, and I pay it. She looked at the receipt on the blanket, at the honest little total Sung-ho had paid out of his own wage. The number I paid that month wasn't this number, it was 3 times this. The room went very still. Somebody billed the family 3 times over for breaks that a dead man had already bought and installed himself, Simone said slowly. 2 weeks before he died in those breaks. I have the invoice, Hae-rin whispered. I have the approval. I have the signature. Jun-so spoke for the first time in a while. His voice was low and terrible. Whose signature? Hae-rin didn't answer. She didn't have to. Simone watched the name move across all 4 of them without anyone saying it, the way weather moves across a field, and she put her hand flat on the blanket over the receipts. Nobody says it yet, she said. Not out loud, not in this house, not on a phone. The second we say it, they scrub. The car's already gone. If they know we're looking at the brakes, the invoice disappears, the approval disappears, and the widow gets a very kind visit from a very kind man in a gray suit. She looked at Sun Young's face in her memory, the ring on the chain, the card kept in a pocket against the body. We are 4 people who each have one corner of this. Hairin has the paper. Daehyun has the car and the gate. Junso has the account nobody else can open. And I have… She stopped. You have what? Junso said. She thought of the card face down on the widow's table, the name she'd read twice and not spoken. Beat 6, she told herself, though she didn't have the words for it. The thing that turns a suspicion into a rope, that isn't ready, that will get someone killed if she pulls it early. I have the widow, she said instead, and the widow is afraid. Which means we move fast and we tell no one, not the gray suit, not the board, not the doctor, not the woman in the gray dress who said keep the receipt. 4 of us. This room, nothing on paper that leaves my bag. Daehyun rolled his log back up. Hairin closed her ledger. Junso sat back, and there was a color in his face that had nothing to do with the training, and Simone realized she was looking at a man who, for 2 years, had believed a car killed his friend and crippled him by accident, and who had just understood, in the space of one night, that it had been done to him, on purpose, by someone who ate at his table. They didn't take my legs, Junso said quietly. Somebody took them, and then they hired a doctor to tell me they were gone for good, so I'd stop looking for the person who took them. Yes, Simone said. 2 years. He wasn't looking at her. He was looking at the door Min-jae had left open. I helped him. I let them carry me. I believed the number. His hands closed. I built the wall higher than Choi did. You didn't know. I know now. He looked up, and the exhaustion was gone out of his eyes, burned off, replaced by something Simone had been waiting 3 weeks to see and wasn't entirely sure she'd survive. Get Yoonji on the phone tomorrow. From the garden. I want to stand longer. I don't care what it costs. A breath. If I'm going to take his ring off his hand at that hearing, I'm going to do it standing up. That's 5 weeks away. Then we don't waste a night. Simone gathered the receipts, slid them into the zip pocket beside the check and the card she still hadn't named. 3 pieces of paper now, sitting against each other in the dark of her bag. She zipped it. Down the hall, a door she hadn't heard open was standing open. She went to close Junso's, and as she reached for it, she saw, at the far end of the corridor, on the landing under the photograph of the young woman getting out of the black car, a phone lying face up on the side table where no phone had been that morning. Its screen was lit. It was recording, the little red dot, the running clock, someone's careful hand having set it down angled at the length of the hall, at the 4 of them, at the light under Junso's door. She had told them, nothing on a phone. Somebody in this house had already put one there. Simone did not walk toward the phone. She looked at it the way she looked at a wound she hadn't opened yet, knowing already it would be worse underneath. The red dot pulsed at the far end of the hall. The screen threw a thin blue line up the wall, under the framed photo, across the floorboards toward the door she'd been about to close. She counted 3 seconds of it. Then she stepped back into the room and eased the door shut with her palm flat against the wood, slow, so the latch wouldn't click. What? Junso said. There's a phone recording us, on the table under the photo. He wheeled a half turn. His hands went still on the rims. Since when? I don't know. She kept her voice low and even. Long enough to hear me say nothing on a phone. Hairin was already on her feet, the leather folder pressed to her chest. Daehyun crossed to the door and put 2 fingers on the handle, listening, the way a man listens for footsteps that aren't there. If I open it, he said, and someone's watching the feed, they know we found it. And if you don't, Simone said, they keep the next hour too. Nobody moved for a breath. Then Daehyun opened the door. The hall was empty. The phone lay exactly where she'd seen it, angled along the runner, the lens a small black eye pointed at the 4 of them. Daehyun didn't touch it. He crouched, read the screen without breathing on it, and his jaw set. It's not recording to the phone, he said. It's streaming. There's no file on here to take. It's already gone somewhere. Hairin made a sound behind her teeth. Simone came out into the hall. She looked at the little glass eye and did not cover it with her hand, because covering it now was theater, and the show was already sold. She looked instead at the photo above it, the young woman stepping out of the black car, candid, enlarged, framed between the oil portraits. The phone sat directly beneath her, as if the woman in the picture were the one holding it. "Turn it off," Junso said from the doorway. He'd wheeled himself to the threshold. "Turn it off, Daehyun. If I kill it, the feed cuts. They'll know the second it cuts." "They already know," Simone said. "They've known for a while." She reached down and picked up the phone. It was warm. Not room warm, hand warm, recently held, and that told her more than the screen did. Somebody had set it there minutes ago, not hours. Somebody had walked this hall while the four of them talked and laid it down like a card face up, meaning for it to be found, or careless enough not to care. The screen showed a live call, no name, a number she didn't recognize, the seconds ticking up past 19 minutes. 19 minutes. She thought of everything the last 19 minutes had held. The brake receipts. The scrapped car in 9 days. The invoice billed 3 times. Seung-ho warning 2 people and dying before he reached the 3rd. Hae-rin saying she had the signature. The signature they had all been careful not to say out loud. Out loud into a room with a phone in the hall. "He has it," she said. "All of it. The car, the receipts, Hae-rin's invoice." She didn't look up from the screen. "Every piece we thought was ours." Junso's hands tightened on the rims until the leather of his gloves creaked. "Cut it," he said. Daehyun took the phone from her, held his thumb over the red bar, and pressed. The call died. The screen went to a lock face, a photo of nothing, a gray wallpaper, no apps, no contacts, a burner. Set up to do one thing. The 4 of them stood in the hall, under the portrait of a woman none of them could name, holding a phone that had just handed their entire case to the one person they were building it against. Simone slept 2 hours and woke before the house did. She went down to the garden, past the 4 cameras she'd counted on her second day, to the dead spot at the far hedge where the lenses didn't reach, and she called Yoon-ji. "He knows," she said, before the doctor could speak. "Min-jae, whatever we had, he heard it last night." A phone in the hall, streaming, 19 minutes. The line was quiet. Then Yoon-ji said, "The diagnosis?" "No, that we kept in this house between 3 people, and I never said it near a phone." Simone pressed her back against the hedge. "But the accident, the brakes, the invoice. He has all of it now, and he had it before we could put it in front of anyone who counts." "Then move it out of the house," Yoon-ji said. "Today, whatever's on paper, get it to me and to Hae-rin's copies and out of any room he owns." "That's what I called to say." "Simone." A pause. "If he heard 19 minutes, he heard you say the widow's name. He heard the card." Simone shut her eyes. She had. Somewhere in that hour she'd said Soon Young out loud, described the drive, the second lock, the man in the gray suit who knew which medication the woman took before she said it. She'd handed Min-jae the one person outside these walls who trusted her. "I have to warn her," she said. "Then warn her. And Simone, don't come back into that house thinking you're still ahead of him. You're not. Last night you fell behind." The line went dead in her hand, the way she'd wanted it to. She stood in the wet grass a moment longer, then went back inside, because there was a wound upstairs that needed dressing, and a man in it who was about to have his last floor pulled out from under him. She found the first sign at breakfast, which she never took in the main house, but that morning she came down for it on purpose, to watch faces. Hae-rin's chair at the small office table was empty. Her folder was gone from the sideboard where she left it each night. When Simone asked the kitchen woman, she got a flat answer. Miss Yoon had been called to the accounting office in the city, early. A car sent for her at 6. A car sent for her, not a car she took. Simone climbed back up to Junso's room and said it plainly. They moved Hae-rin. "Sent a car at 6. She's at the office." He was already dressed, sitting by the window, the muscle in his face working. "That's not unusual. Quarter close is." "There's no quarter close for 2 more weeks. You told me that yourself." She set down the tray she hadn't meant to bring. "They took the one of us who holds the paper, and they took her the morning after he heard everything." Junso picked up his phone and called Hae-rin's line. It rang out. He called it twice more. The 3rd time it went straight to a recorded voice, the mailbox full. "Full," he said. He looked at the phone like it had lied to him. "Her mailbox is never full." Simone said nothing. She was learning the shape of the day already, and the shape was a hand closing. The second sign came at 11. Daehyun found her in the upstairs hall and didn't bother with cover. His face had gone to stone, and stone on Daehyun meant something had already happened. "I'm off the gate," he said. "What?" "Reassigned. Effective this morning. There's a new team on the perimeter. Outside contractor, not our people. I'm told to take 2 weeks." "Paid," he said, paid, the way Soon Young had said the word about the family's money, like something meant to buy silence and shaped like kindness. "I've been at that gate 6 years. Nobody takes me off it." "The logs," Simone said. Her mouth had gone dry. "The gate logs, your copies." 2 copies, one at the guardhouse, one hidden. His eyes moved, just barely. "The guardhouse one is gone. I checked before they walked me out. The drawer's empty, the whole 2 years. Gone. And the hidden one? Still hidden." A muscle jumped in his cheek. "But if they knew there were 2, they'll be looking. And a new team on the ground means every trip I make from here on is watched by people who don't owe me anything." Simone leaned against the wall and made herself breathe. In one morning, Hyerin gone to the office and unreachable. Daehyun pulled off the gate and replaced with strangers. The guardhouse log emptied. The pieces she'd spent 4 nights gathering were being unhooked from their people one by one, gently, with cars sent and paid leave granted, so that no one could point to a single act of force. That was the thing about Min Jae. He never used a fist when a schedule would do. "Get the hidden copy out," she told Daehyun. "Today. To Eunji, or to wherever she says. Don't bring it back inside the wall. That's what I came to tell you I'm doing." He glanced down the hall toward the photo. "You should get your papers out too. Whatever's in that bag." She put her hand over the strap without thinking. "I will. There's something else." He lowered his voice further, though the hall was empty and the new men weren't inside the house yet. "Seung-ho trained me. I told you that. What I didn't tell you is why he trained me, and not one of the family's own. He didn't trust them with the driving. He said a driver hears everything, and a driver who talks is a driver who stops driving." He held her eyes. He was careful his whole life. 11 years careful, and they scrapped his car in 9 days and told his widow he was careless. If they can do that to a man who never once took a wrong turn, they can do it to a caregiver who's been here a month. Simone had understood the danger in her head all week. Now she felt it in her chest, in the place her mother's 4 missed calls were about to land. "I'll get my papers out," she said again, and this time it wasn't a promise to him, it was a decision forming. "Do it before you sleep again." He straightened. "And Simone, when you move like the driver did. Careful, all the way to the end. Careless is how they get to say it was your fault." He went, and she stood in the hall a moment with his words in her, listening to the house that had never once, she realized, been quiet without also being watched. She should have gone to her mother that afternoon. She'd meant to warn Sun Young first, then Mireille, reach the 2 women on the edges of this, before Min Jae's schedule reached them. She got as far as her room to find her phone. There were 4 missed calls from her mother's number. Her stomach dropped before she'd pressed a single button. Mireille didn't call 4 times. Mireille called once, said what she had to say, and hung up because minutes cost money. 4 calls was not her mother. 4 calls was something wrong with her mother. She called back. It rang twice. "Simone," her mother's voice, and under it a wrongness, a held breath. "Baby, there's a man been by the building twice today. Nice suit, gray suit." The floor tilted. "He knew things," Mireille went on, low, the way she talked when she didn't want the neighbors through the wall to hear. "He knew my heart medicine. He knew which pharmacy, the one in Flatbush. He said he was from the family you work for, said he wanted to make sure I was taken care of. He left a card. He asked when you'd be visiting next." Simone sat down on the edge of the bed because her legs decided it for her. "Mama, listen to me. Don't let him in. Don't take anything from him. Don't sign anything. Don't cash anything. Nothing." "I didn't?" A pause. "But Simone, he knew I only take 4 of the 6. He knew that. How does a stranger know how many pills I take?" Because a phone in a hallway heard her say it. Because 4 nights ago she'd stood in a rich man's house and told the truth about her mother's medicine to a man in a wheelchair, and somewhere a lens had been pointed at the door. She'd walked her mother into this. She'd carried her family across the exact threshold she'd sworn to keep them behind. "He said," Mireille went on, and now the held breath cracked a little. He said it would be a shame if the pharmacy stopped extending you credit, that you'd been late. He said he could fix that. Or, she stopped. Or he could make it worse, Simone finished. Yes. Simone closed her eyes. The gray suit had gone to Sun Young with a card and a kindness that was a knife. Now the gray suit had gone to her mother with the same. He was not threatening to hurt them. He was offering to help them, in a voice that made clear how easily help could be withdrawn. It was the cleanest cruelty she had ever heard described, and it was standing in the hallway of her mother's building on the 3rd floor, asking when she'd be home. Mama, I need you to do something for me, and not ask why yet. All right. Go to Auntie Fabienne's tonight. Take the medicine, all of it, the whole box. Stay there. Don't tell anyone at the building where you went. Silence. Then, quiet. It's that bad. It's that bad. I'm sorry. I'll explain when I can. You're not in trouble with these people, Simone. I'm going to be, she said, and it was the truest thing she'd said all day. Her mother was quiet on the line. In the background, Simone could hear the building, a door somewhere, the radiator knocking, the ordinary sounds of the 3rd floor where she'd grown up doing homework on the kitchen table. I took this job for the medicine, Mirelle said finally. You told me to go with the number in front of me, and not the pride. You remember? I remember. I keep thinking I sent you into that house. Her mother's voice was steady, the way it got when it cost her the most to keep it steady. For my heart. I sent my girl to a rich man's door for my heart, and now the rich man's people are at mine. You didn't send me anywhere I didn't choose. Simone pressed the heel of her hand against her eyes. And I'm choosing again right now. Go to Fabienne's. Take the whole box. I'll call you tomorrow from a phone I trust. A phone you trust. A pause. What kind of house is it where you have to say that? Simone had no answer that wouldn't frighten her more, so she gave her the only thing that was true. The kind I'm leaving tonight. She went to Junso at dusk with the phone still warm in her fist. He was by the window. He'd been by the window most of the day, she thought. The room had the still, breathed-out quality of a man who'd been sitting in one place turning something over. He heard her come in and didn't turn. He sent a man to my mother, she said. That turned him. The chair came around. The gray suit, she said. The same one who went to Sun Young. He stood in my mother's hallway today and told her he knew her heart medicine and her pharmacy and how many pills she skips. He offered to fix her credit. He asked when I'd be home. Junso's face had gone the color it went during the worst of the training, gray under the light. That's not. He stopped. Started again. That's Min Jae reaching outside the house. That's a line he doesn't cross. He crossed it this morning at my mother's door. She heard her own voice climbing and pulled it back down. He heard everything 4 nights ago through a phone in your hallway. My mother's medicine. The widow's name. He heard me say all of it in this house. And now he's walking it, one door at a time, to everyone I brought into this. Then we move faster. No. The word came out flat and hard, and it stopped him. Not we. Not from in here. He went still. She'd been building to this all day, and she hadn't known it until she heard herself say it. It came up out of her like the truth of a diagnosis, the thing that had been true under the skin before she found the words. I can't do this from inside your house, she said. Every night I've slept under this roof, he's watched. Every word I've said in these walls, he's had. Hae-rin's gone this morning, Dae-hyun's off the gate. The guardhouse log's emptied. My mother's got a man at her door who knows her pillbox. All of that happened because everything I know, I said out loud in a place he owns. She set the burner phone down on the table between them, gently, like laying down something dead. This house is his ear. It always was. And I kept talking into it. Simone, he wheeled toward her. If you leave, he's won. The vote's 3 weeks. If you walk out now. If I stay, my mother pays for it. Her voice didn't rise. It went the other way, down to the register she used on the worst nights, the one that didn't leave room to argue. I watched you for 2 years let people make your body small because you believed a man who was paid to lie. I'm not going to stand in this hallway and let him make my mother small the same way. Not for the vote. Not for the company. Not for you. He flinched at the last 2 words. She'd meant them to land, and they landed. You think I want the company, he said, low. I think you want your legs and your name back, and I've spent 4 nights helping you get both, and I'd do it again." She swallowed. "But not from in here. Not sleeping in the room next to the man who'd trade my mother's medicine for a vote. That's not me. I know it's not you." And she did know it, and that was the worst of it, because knowing it didn't change what the house was. "But I can't hold the difference between you and him from inside these walls anymore. He's made the walls the same." Junso sat very still. When he spoke, his voice had gone quiet in a way she hadn't heard from him. Not the pride, not the pain, something underneath both. "You're taking the papers." "I'm taking the papers." She lifted the strap of her bag over her head. "The check I never cashed, the receipts, the card with his name I never said out loud in this house, because some part of me already knew." She almost laughed, and it came out wrong. "I gave them to Yoonji this afternoon. Copies to her, copies to Hae-rin's own hiding place, Daehyun's log going out tonight. Everything real is already out of this house, or on its way. The only thing left in here is me." He absorbed that. She watched him do the arithmetic and reach the bottom of it, that she hadn't decided to leave in the last 5 minutes, that she'd spent the whole day moving the evidence beyond his cousin's reach, and telling him now was the last thing she did, not the first. "You planned this since this morning." "Since the phone was warm in my hand and I understood he'd been listening the whole time." She met his eyes. "I take care of people who can't see what's being done to them. That's the whole job. And I finally looked up and saw what was being done to mine." And the training. His hands were flat on his thighs, on the legs he'd fought 4 nights to feel. 6 seconds. 9. "You said the muscle learned to whisper. You said I don't decide whether it's working. You do." "It's working." Her throat closed, and she pushed through it. "It's working, and you don't need me in the room to keep it working. You need Yoonji, and you need to not let him tell you the wall is real. The wall was never real. You know that now. That's the thing I actually gave you, and I can't ungive it by leaving. Stay till the vote." It wasn't the boss saying it. It was quieter than that. 3 weeks. "If I stay 3 weeks, he has 3 weeks at my mother's door." She shook her head, once. "I'm sorry. I'm not choosing him over you. I'm choosing her over the house. Those aren't the same choice, and you know it." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the window, at the dark coming down over the garden and the 4 cameras, and the new men at the gate who didn't owe anybody anything. "Go out the front," he said, "not the garden. The front, with your bag on your shoulder, in the light, where the new team sees you. Let him watch you leave. Don't give him the pleasure of thinking you snuck." It was, she understood, the closest thing to help he could give her. Advice from a man who'd spent his life being watched by his own security. "Junso," she stopped at the door. "Don't say Min-jae's name out loud in this house. Don't say Choi's. Don't say the widow's. Not to Yoonji on the phone in here, not to yourself. Everything you know now, you keep behind your teeth until you're standing somewhere he doesn't own. You're leaving me the same rule you broke." "That's why I know it's the right one," she said, and left him by the window. She packed in the dark, out of habit, the way she packed for night shifts. Fast, flat, nothing that rattled. It didn't take long. She'd come with 1 bag and she left with 1 bag, heavier only by the weight of paper she'd already sent ahead in copies. The originals rode in the zippered pocket against her ribs. On the landing, she stopped in front of the photo. She'd looked at it close only once before. The young woman, maybe 25, stepping out of the black car, the candid blown up and framed among the oil portraits like grief nobody would explain. Min-jae had named this exact frame as a threat. A phone had streamed 19 minutes of them from the table right beneath it. The woman in the picture had been standing over this whole house the entire time, unnamed, and Simone still didn't know who she was. "Whoever you are," she said to the photo, very quietly, "you already cost somebody everything. I'm not going to be next." She went down the stairs and out the front, into the light, her bag on her shoulder, past the 2 new men at the door who watched her go, and said nothing and reported it to someone the second the door closed behind her. The gate rolled open. The strangers on the perimeter let her pass without a word. At the bottom of the drive, where the wall met the road, a car was parked with its lights off. She saw the shape of it before she saw the man, and she knew the shape of the man before she saw the face, because there was only one man who parked in the dark and waited. The gray suit got out, He didn't hurry. He came around the front of the car and stood on the pavement between her and the road, hands loose at his sides, a card already between two fingers the way Sun Young had described, the way her mother had described. Miss Baptiste, he said her name, like he'd practiced the warmth of it. You've had a long day. Let me drive you home. He tilted his head, and the streetlight caught the flat calm of his face. To your mother's. 3rd floor, isn't it? I was just there. Simone stopped on the drive with the wall at her back and the open gate behind her already rolling shut, and understood that leaving the house had not taken her out of the trap. It had only walked her to the part of it that was waiting outside. Simone stepped to the side of the drive, not toward the car and not back toward the gate, and put the wall at her shoulder. The gray suit man tracked the movement with his chin. He held the card between two fingers the way he always did, an offer that was also a leash. My mother has neighbors, she said, loud ones. 3rd floor hears everything on the 2nd. I only knocked, he said. You knew the medication. You knew the pharmacy. She kept her voice level, the way you keep a hand steady over an open wound. You didn't learn that at a door. Headlights washed the wall behind him. A second car, not his. It came up the public road slow, then stopped at an angle that boxed his sedan against the curb, and the driver's window came down on a woman with glasses and a leather bag on the seat beside her. Dr. Lee Yunji did not look at the gray suit man at all. She looked at Simone. You called, Yunji said. I was closer than you think. The gray suit man's shoulders shifted. He weighed the 2 cars, the 2 women, the closed gate, and the phone that was surely in his pocket. Then he slid the card back into his jacket. Careful, he started. On the stairs, Simone finished. I've heard it. She walked past him. She got into Yunji's car and closed the door, and the lock came down under her elbow before she reached for it. They drove 4 blocks before either of them breathed all the way out. He was at my mother's building, Simone said. Her hands were flat on her knees. They were not shaking, and that scared her more than shaking would have. He stood at her door and said 2nd floor. He wanted me to picture it. Your mother is with your aunt, Fabienne. I confirmed it an hour ago. Yunji took a corner without signaling. She's fine. The whole box of medicine went with her. She's already reorganized your aunt's kitchen, apparently. Simone let out a breath that was almost a laugh and turned into nothing. The pieces are moving faster than the vote now. That's what I came to tell you in person, because I won't say it near a phone that lives in that house. Say it. The widow called the clinic, my clinic. She used my name, the one you gave no one. Yunji's knuckles whitened on the wheel. She has something she wouldn't describe on a line. She'll only give it to you, tonight. Park Sun-young opened the door on the chain first, then all the way, and the second lock she'd bought turned twice behind them. The apartment smelled of instant coffee gone cold. On the small table sat a shoebox, and inside the shoebox, wrapped in a dish towel, was a phone. It was Sung-ho's, Sun-young said. Not the one they gave back to me. His other one. The work one. He kept it in the wheel well of his own car, in a bag, because he said one day someone would tell a story about him, and he wanted a witness that couldn't be paid. Her hand went to the ring on the chain at her throat. I was afraid of it for 2 years. Then the man in the gray suit came to my door, and I stopped being afraid of the box and started being afraid of him. Simone did not touch it yet. Does it turn on? It's dead. I never charged it. I didn't want it awake in my house. Yunji already had a cable out of her bag. They plugged it into the wall, and the 3 of them sat around a table meant for 2, while a black screen decided whether it would come back. It came back. No password. Sung-ho had left it open on purpose, the way a man leaves a note where it will be found. The most recent thing on it was a folder of photographs, dated the week before the accident. Invoices. Not the clean laminated ones Hei-rin paid against. The real shop copies, grease at the corners, handwritten. And a service ticket for the brakes with a parts list, and at the top of the parts list a serial number stamped on a small paper label. The last photograph in the folder was not an invoice. It was a woman getting out of a black car. Simone's hand stopped over the screen. It was the photograph from the landing. The same woman, the same car, the same ordinary afternoon, except here, it was a phone snapshot, candid, taken by a man sitting in a parked vehicle across a lot. Sung-ho had photographed her, and under it, in the notes, 3 lines in careful thumb-typed Korean that Yoonji read out loud, slowly, so the words landed one at a time. She signs for the shop. The name on the shop is her name. She has been dead 1 year. The room went very quiet. He found it, Simone said. Before the trip. He found the whole thing and he was carrying it to Junsu. Yoonji scrolled once more. And there it was. The last outgoing call Seung-ho ever tried to make. Timed the night before he died. To a number saved as Mr. Han Direct. Duration, 0 seconds. It had not connected. Somewhere between his thumb and the tower, the call had died, and 9 days later, so had the car. Sun Young put both hands flat on the table. Say his name at the right time, she said. You promised. I will say all of them, Simone said. The widow's fingers found the ring at her throat again. For 2 years they let people say he was careless. Neighbors, his own cousin, once at the funeral, patting my hand. Her voice stayed low. A man who checked a car every morning for 11 years. They put lazy on his grave and paid me to agree. She pushed the phone an inch across the table, toward Simone. The way you hand off something you've carried too long. Take it now. I don't want to sleep near it again. Yoonji copied the folder to her own device before they unplugged anything. 2 copies, then a third, so that no single dead battery could ever again decide what the truth was. The serial number was the thread that pulled the code apart, and it took Hae-rin to pull it. Hae-rin was not unreachable anymore. Her voicemail had been full for a reason. She'd filled it herself, on purpose, so that no new instruction from the office could reach her while she copied what she needed. She met them at the back of a diner 2 towns from the city, with a leather folder that had gone everywhere with her and a face that had not slept. She listened to the phone. She looked at the serial number on the screen, and then she opened her folder to a registration page she had printed at a public library, and she laid the 2 side by side. The shop that billed the family 3 times for breaks, a dead man already installed, she said, is registered to a holding company, 1 director of record. Her finger moved to a name. This name. Read it, Simone said. Hae-rin read it. It was the name of the woman in the photograph, the woman who had been dead a year before she'd allegedly signed anything. And the holding company, Hae-rin said, turning one more page, her voice thinning, invoices a private medical consultancy. Retainer, monthly, 2 years. She set her fingertip on the payee, Dr. Choi Sung-won. There it was, at last, on paper, in one straight line a child could follow. The shop, the shell, the dead woman's stolen name, and the doctor who had written. Complete, total, permanent. Over a spine that had never been cut, a man had been paid to sell despair, and the money came home through a corpse. Whose hand set it up? Simone said. The shell doesn't sign itself. Hae-rin's throat worked. She reached into the folder one final time and drew out the break invoice, the one billed at 3 times its worth, and turned it so the approval line faced up. There was a signature there, small, precise. She had never said it aloud in the house, not once. She said it now. Han Min-jae. The card in Simone's zippered bag had said the same name in the widow's stairwell weeks ago. She had read it twice and carried it silent through every room he owned. She took it out now and set it on the table beside the invoice, and the 2 names matched the way 2 halves of a torn ticket match, and nobody at the table needed it explained. Dae-hyun brought the last piece to the same diner an hour later, in a manila envelope worn soft at the corners from living taped under a drawer. The hidden gate log. 2 years of every car in and out, in his own hand, times and plates. He put his thumb on one line. The tow for the scrap, he said. 9 days after. And this, he moved his thumb up 2 lines, is the gray suit's car, in the yard. The night before the tow, alone, 20 minutes. He looked at Simone, long enough to be sure the brakes went to the crusher before anyone with a wrench got curious. You wrote it down as it happened, Yoonji said. Seung-ho taught me. Write it as it happens. Numbers don't get scared later. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. He was my friend. I logged his death like a delivery, because I didn't know yet it was one. Now I do. He pressed the manila envelope flat with his palm, the way you press a wound closed. He told me to move like the driver, careful to the end. I kept the second copy under a drawer for 2 years because he said 1 copy is a story, and 2 copies is a fact. His eyes came up. This is the fact. Then we carry it in tomorrow, Simone said. Not one of us alone. All of us at once, so no single one of us can be reassigned before the door opens. They had it all. The mechanic's real invoices and the dead woman's stolen signature from Sung-ho's phone. The registration linking the shop to Choi's retainer. From Hae-rin. The gate log putting Min-jae's man in the yard the night before the evidence vanished. From Dae-hyun. The silence check, never cashed, that only made sense if Simone was a witness and not a nurse. And, held back and sharpest, kept out of every room with a telephone in it, the one thing Min-jae still believed was true, that the man in the chair could not stand. The vote is the resolution hearing, Hae-rin said. Directors only. He's moved it up again, 9 days. Then we don't wait 9 days, Simone said. We ask the gray suit director to open the door. The gray suit director. The woman who had risen at the board meeting, who had said, "Keep the receipt." On her way out, took the meeting because Simone brought a receipt, several. She read the registration and the retainer schedule in the back of a parked car with the dome light on, and when she reached Choi's name on the payee line, she went still, in the exact way careful people go still when a floor they trusted turns out to be a lid. A resolution of incapacity requires a medical letter, she said. One letter. His whole mechanism balances on it. The letter is a lie, Simone said. I can't prove that with paper. I can prove it with him. The director looked at her a long moment. You understand that if you're wrong in that room, in front of those men, you hand Min-jae the vote clean. I've read the muscle for a month, Simone said. He hasn't. And the man himself? If his legs choose that morning to say no, then the papers still stand on their own. Simone tapped the folder. The standing isn't the proof. The standing is so they can't look away while I read them the proof. Min-jae taught me that. He waved his cousin around a table like a poster for months. She closed the folder. I'm going to make him watch the poster get up. The director's mouth moved toward something that was not quite a smile. The director opened her calendar. Thursday, 10 o'clock. The full board, the 2 directors who seconded me, and me. I'll invoke the second opinion motion they never let die. He can't refuse a quorum that's already in the building. She closed the calendar. Bring your receipts. Bring the widow. Bring the man. Thursday, 10 o'clock. The long hall. The table of 14 with 11 chairs filled. Min-jae sat in the patriarch's chair at the head, as if it had grown him. He wore charcoal and calm, and he had a folder of his own, and a lawyer at his elbow, and the look of a man who had already counted the votes twice and found them his. Simone came in behind the wheelchair. She did not push it to the wall this time. She pushed it to the head of the table, across the length of it, so that Junso faced his cousin down the whole polished run of wood. The caregiver has no standing here, the lawyer said. She has mine, the gray suit director said, and set a single sheet in front of her. I've engaged her as a consultant to this board, effective this morning. It's minuted. Now sit down and let the woman work. Min-jae's smile held. By all means, let's hear the hope again before we vote on the facts. Simone did not raise her voice. She laid the facts down one at a time, the way she had cleaned the wound the first night, slow enough that no one could look away from what was underneath. She set down the widow's break receipt. New lines, new pads, new fluid, paid from a driver's own wages, 2 weeks before he died. New brakes don't fail in 2 weeks. She set down Daehyun's gate log, open to the tow line. The car was crushed in 9 days, with an open claim, after this man's car sat alone in the yard the night before. She set down Hae-rin's registration and the retainer schedule. The shop that billed this family 3 times for those brakes is a shell. Its director of record has been dead for a year. She let that sit. The shell pays 1 doctor a retainer. Dr. Choi, the same doctor who wrote the letter this entire resolution stands on. The 2 old directors leaned in. One of them had laughed, once, weeks ago, the first public crack. He was not laughing now. He was reading. He read the retainer schedule twice, and then he looked up the table at Min-jae, the way an old man looks at a boy he has known since the boy was small, and is only now understanding. You billed the family, the old director said slowly, for a dead man's work, 3 times. He set the page down as if it were hot, and routed our money to the doctor who told us to give up on our own principle. That's a chain of paper, Min-jae said, unhurried. Paper can be arranged. My cousin's condition is not paper. It is a fact confirmed by a physician. Complete, total, permanent. He turned his palm up toward the chair, the old gesture, the exhibit. No amount of storytelling makes a broken spine walk to this table. You're right, Simone said. It doesn't. She stepped to the side of the chair. She reached down and, from the bag at the footplate, drew the braces Yoonji had fitted in the last 2 weeks of nights Min-jae never saw. Light, black, hinged at the knee. She knelt and set them. She locked the wheels. She slid her forearms under Jun-so's, palm to palm, wrist to wrist, the same lock as the first night, and she said the 2 words she had said to a muscle in the dark, until the muscle learned to answer. Stand for me. He stood. Not lifted, not held. His feet took the floor and his knees took the hinges and the braces took only what braces take, and the weight, most of it, then more, came off her arms and went down through him into the ground, and she stepped back again, and left him standing in the brace on his own account at the head of his family's table with his hand on the wood. Somebody's chair scraped. Nobody spoke. A reflex, Min-jae said, but the word came out with an edge for the first time, because a reflex does not cross a room's worth of silence upright. You paid for the letter, Jun-so said. Down the whole table, at last, in his own voice. You paid for the doctor. You paid for the shop. You paid a dead woman's name to hide the breaks. He turned his head, unhurried, and let his cousin see him level. You didn't take my legs, Min-jae. You told me they were gone and paid a man to keep telling me until I believed it. That's worse. You made me help you. Min-jae stood. His lawyer put a hand on his sleeve and he shook it off. This is theater. His name was Sung-ho, Soon-young said from the doorway. She had been waiting there, small, the ring at her throat, and she walked in now on legs that shook and did not stop. She put Sung-ho's work phone on the table and turned it so the last photograph faced the room, the woman getting out of the black car, and beside it the 3 thumb-typed lines and the call that never connected. 11 years he checked that car every morning, she said. The night before you sent him up that road he found your shop and your dead woman's name, and he tried to call the one man he trusted. She touched the screen. 0 seconds. Then you crushed the car so no one could see the brakes he'd just put in. Her voice did not break. It went straight. Say his name in this room, all of you, once. He earned it. The gray suit director said it first, then the old director who had laughed. Then, one by one, around the table, the name of a driver went around a room full of men who had signed off on calling him careless. Min-jae reached the door. Kim Dae-hyun was already standing in it. You reassigned me, Dae-hyun said. I kept the log. He did not move out of the frame. Behind him, in the hall, were 2 officers the gray suit director had asked to wait until 10, and a woman from the fraud unit with a warrant that named a holding company and a retainer and a stolen signature. They read Min-jae his charges by the patriarch's chair. He did not fight the hands. He had counted everything except the one number Simone had never said near a phone. As they turned him, the signet ring caught the light on his finger, the one shaped like the leadership seal, the one he'd worn as if it were already his. Jun-so crossed the room in the brace. 6 steps. Slow, his hand on chair backs, then on nothing. He stopped in front of his cousin and he did not raise a fist. He reached out and took the ring off Min-jae's finger himself, drew it clean, and closed it in his palm. You have to be able to stand to lead, Jun-so said. You wrote that rule. He was standing. I'm keeping it. They took Min-jae out through the hall he'd emptied of witnesses, past the landing, past the photograph of the dead woman whose name had been a knife, and the front door closed behind him, with a sound no one in the room mistook for anything but the end of him. Choi was arrested the same afternoon at a clinic with a luxury pen in his coat and no explanation for a retainer paid by a corpse. The medical letter was withdrawn. The resolution of incapacity died for lack of its single leg. Yoon Hae-rin walked back into the accounts she'd copied by Library Light and started the long work of uncooking 2 years of books. Kim Dae-hyun stood at the gate again, and this time the log was his to keep in the open. The silence check, never cashed, went into a prosecutor's file exactly as intact as the day it came, worth more unspent than it had ever been worth spent. And the pharmacy in Flatbush called Morel's number to say a year of the expensive one was paid, not by a nameless benefactor this time, but by a man who signed his own name to it and wrote the drivers underneath. because Sun Young had asked that Sung Ho's name go on something that helped somebody live. Months later, the rehabilitation center kept its lights on past visiting hours for one room at the end of a bright hall, and the floor there was not marble, but soft board, sprung for feet still learning to trust the ground. Simone wore no badge that said caregiver anymore. She had a consultant's lanyard and her mother in a chair by the window, brought to watch, and a phone playing something slow from a small speaker on the sill. Junso crossed the floor to her. Braces still, at the knee, and a cane he leaned on less than he had last month. No wall, no lock, no one holding his weight but him. 6 months to a year, Simone said. Yoonji told you the first night. She undersold it. She never undersells. She took the cane from his hand and set it against the sill, and she stepped in and put her forearms where they had gone 100 nights, palm to palm, wrist to wrist. Except now it held nothing up. It only held, "You're carrying yourself." "I know." Mireille watched from the chair with both hands folded over the pill organizer she no longer had to ration. 6 slots full now. None of them skipped. She had brought it to show her daughter, the way another mother might bring a photograph. They moved. It was barely a dance, a shift of weight, a turn the width of one board and back, and it was the whole thing. He faltered at the turn and caught it. His hand tightened on her. "You could sit," she said. "You don't have to stand to be here." "I want to." "Then, want it." She turned him, slow, into the light from the window where her mother was smiling. "But hear me once, so you never forget it, in a room full of men with rings." She stopped, and made him look at her, and said it plain. "You don't have to stand to deserve to stand beside me." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He held on, and he held himself up, and for the length of one slow song at the end of a bright hall, the man they'd told the world could never rise stayed on his feet, not to prove it to a board, not to keep a chair, not for anyone counting days. Just to dance. By the window, Mireille closed the pill organizer and held it in her lap like a small, full thing, and she watched her daughter hold a man up by holding nothing at all. The music ended. Neither of them let go. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever cared for someone the world had already written off and seen the truth only you noticed? When you finally held the proof in your hands, did you have the courage to say it out loud, even to the powerful people who wanted you silent? And would you still choose to stand beside someone who could never stand for you? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and redemption, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.